Chapter 3007. Yi Qinghan had considered everything. Facing Chioda was much better than facing a sage. Yan Emperor thought about it and felt that Yi Qinghan's suggestion was good. Unfortunately, Yan Chong was already scared of him and fled with the sage sacred ground. Yi Qinghan placed the Assassin Legion in the north of northern Xiong immortal country. They only needed to watch Chioda. Then, he, Yan Emperor, and Yan Yunbei all rushed to the chaotic heavenly domain. At this moment, Lu Zong relied on his status as the holy son of a sacred ground. Even if he couldn't break through Crazy Manor's defenses, he still wouldn't retreat. The Taigu Emperor occupied 90% of the army of 3,000. They couldn't use much of their strength in the Seeking Heaven domain. After attacking Crazy Manor for more than 10 months, they still couldn't enter the chaotic heavenly domain, let alone attack the inner regions of Crazy Manor. Gu Qingyu, Mu Zhuang, Shi Gu, Yi Mengshi, Green Lotus Sword Saint, and all the older generation of Crazy Manor were here. However, there weren't many who needed to fight. Half a month later, Yi Qinghan arrived at the chaotic heavenly domain. The first thing he did was to disperse most of the older generation of Crazy Manor. Mu Zhuang, Qitian Monkey King, Gu Qingyu, Green Lotus Sword Saint, and other top experts of the older generation were all dismissed. Charity Saint was the first to leave. Crazy Manor only left 30 plus Taigu Emperor, Yan Emperor, and Yan Yunbei. Moreover, Yan Yunbei hid in the chaotic heavenly domain. Unless a sage came personally, no one could find him. No one knew why Yi Qinghan decided to withdraw all the experts of Crazy Manor. Those who stayed might die, but Yi Qinghan and Jian Qinxue were here. Yan Emperor and Yan Yunbei were also here. The Taigu Emperor wasn't afraid. At worst, he would fight to the death with Yi Qinghan. Open the seal of the Seeking Heaven domain. Let's go and see what Lu Zong is capable of, Yi Qinghan said calmly. Hearing this, the divine bird quickly undid the seal. The Begging Heaven domain and the Primal Chaos Heaven domain were connected, and the 3,000 experts led by Lu Zong were gasping for breath. It seemed that they had been attacking the seal with all their might recently, but they hadn't expected Yi Qinghan to take the initiative to open the seal. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan appeared in the Seeking Heaven region with the 7-foot crazed maniac in hand. Looking at the 3,000 experts, the Sage Holy Land had mobilized more than half of their peripheral forces. However, there were only a few direct Ancestor Realm experts. Including the peripheral forces, there were about 17 to 18 Ancestor Realm experts. There were more half-martial ancestors, and the rest were the Taigu Emperor. Lu Zong was overjoyed. He wanted to lead his army into Qiu Heaven, but when he saw Yi Qinghan take the initiative to attack, his breathing froze. Seeing Yi Qinghan's cold eyes, he couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. Yi Qinghan looked at Lu Zong and shook his head in disdain. The Heaven Patroller has been killed by my Crazy Manor. Sage Fang Yu will be here soon. Lu Zong, if you don't want to be implicated, you'd better leave quickly. Otherwise, don't say I didn't warn you if you get killed, Yi Qinghan said coldly. Lu Zong was shocked. The Heaven Patroller's death was equivalent to Qiu Da's death. The sage would definitely take action. Your Highness, let's leave first. If what he said is true, Sage Fang Yu will definitely appear here within 3 months. When that time comes, we won't be able to leave even if we want to. After all, the range of the sage's involvement is too wide, a powerful middle-aged man reminded. Lu Zong was afraid of death, so he agreed without hesitation. Yi Qinghan, if you can live for 3 years, I'll definitely come back for revenge. I'll lock you up in the Crazy Manor for 10,000 eras. Don't even think about coming out. Lu Zong didn't forget to leave a ruthless sentence before leaving. Yi Qinghan snorted in disdain. He never cared about anyone below the sage realm. If the sage didn't come, he, Yan Emperor, and Yan Yunbei could wipe out any Ancestor Realm limit experts. Hua! Yi Qinghan occupied the Qiu Tian domain. The next battle would be between the Sage Realm and the ancient immortal subworld. He couldn't let the aftermath of the battle spread to the Crazy Manor Immortal Empire. Senior Yan Emperor, Old Yan, Qinxue, take the other Taigu Emperors and wait for me in the Chaos Heavenly Domain. Once Sage Feng Yu appears, immediately seal the entrances of the Qiu Tian Domain and Chaos Heavenly Domain. The Divine Bird and I will deal with Sage Feng Yu. If we can't win, I'll buy you some time. Take the Divine Bird away. Whoever can refine it, no need to hesitate. Yi Qinghan looked at the Qiu Tian domain and said in a deep voice. Yan Emperor frowned. The Divine Bird sage power might not be as good as the other older sages. If Yi Qinghan and the Divine Bird worked together, they would only have a 50-50 chance of winning. I'll stay. Leave the Divine Bird to me. I'll deal with Sage Feng Yu, Yan Emperor said firmly. Yi Qinghan knew that the Flaming Emperor was strong, and he also knew that the Flaming Emperor had never admitted defeat. However, no one knew the Flaming Emperor better than him when it came to understanding the Flaming Emperor and the Flaming Emperor. Senior, I appreciate your kindness. However, I've been working together with the Divine Bird for so many years. Our hearts are connected. I believe in myself more. Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice, there's no time to lose. Senior, please act according to the plan. If I die, just help me take revenge. Also, help me take care of Quang Mansion. We can't be wiped out in one fell swoop. Yan Emperor exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and retreated without saying anything else. Yan Yunbei and Jian Qinxue exchanged glances. Jian Qinxue then returned to the chaotic heavenly domain. However, Yan Yunbei disappeared from the seeking heaven domain. Yi Qinghan frowned and said in a deep voice, Old Yan, you should leave too. Once the sage comes, this place will be destroyed. Cut the crap. We've been brothers for so many years. I've never missed a fight. I'll accompany you in this battle. An ethereal voice was heard. Even Yi Qinghan couldn't find his exact location. Sigh, Yi Qinghan sighed softly. He stood alone in the seeking heaven domain. The astral winds in the primal universe blew, and his battle robes were cold. At this moment, in the Sage Holy Lands dojo in the Sky Survey secondary realm, Sage Feng Yu looked at the corpse on the ground and took a deep breath. He clenched his fists, and the universe around him seemed to be clenched. Space distorted, and the fluctuations in the dojo were very obvious. Did Yi Qinghan do this? Sage Feng Yu asked calmly. An ancestor knelt on the ground and said in fear, Lord Sage, it was Yan Yunbei of the Crazy Manor. He was killed in one blow. His heart was pierced. Sage Feng Yu's eyes flashed coldly. He shook his head and waved his hand. Whoosh! Puchi! A sword light flashed, and the ancestor kneeling on the ground had his vitality and soul extinguished. Then, a very young expert appeared. He was at the limit of the ancestor realm. He looked similar to Sage Feng Yu. His aura seemed small, but the moment he appeared, the laws and logos around him collapsed toward the center. Xian, I've spent so many years trying to nurture a second sage. Now that you've comprehended the power of the sage, you've reached 50% of Grandpa's strength. From now on, it's time for you to come out and accompany Grandpa. I want to see who the sage behind Quang Manor is. How dare he kill my chief disciple? Sage Feng Yu was very angry. He waved his hand and took out the soul in the Lord Sentinel's sea of consciousness. The Lord Sentinel was at the end of his life, and whether he could be saved was another matter. However, the body was definitely dead. Come with me. Sage Feng Yu said in a deep voice. Feng Xian cupped his fists and said, Yes, grandfather. You don't have to do anything in this battle. I can do it alone. I'll force the sage behind the Crazy Manor out. Chapter 3008. Feng Xian was Feng Yu's grandson. His combat power was close to 50% of a sage's. Although he was 1,000 miles away from a sage at the pinnacle, the progenitor realm was like an ant in front of him. Sage Feng Yu looked at his own grandson and felt gratified. His goal was simple, which was to make the sacred ground a unique existence among the 9 sacred grounds. 2 sages in one sacred ground was definitely unique. Xian, if they really have a sage this time, I'll leave the rest to you. I'll stop that sage. Sage Feng Yu said in a deep voice. Feng Xian bowed and replied, yes. Grandpa, don't worry. I'll destroy the crazy house personally. Whoosh. Whoosh. Other than Zhang Daoling, this was the first time Feng Yu had appeared in Qiutian domain. Feng Xian followed closely behind. Although he looked casual, the murderous intent in his eyes was self-evident. He wanted to establish his dominance in this battle and become the strongest below the sages. Even the sages would have to look at him in a new light and avoid him. At this moment, Yi Qinghan was standing in Qiutian domain with the 7-foot crazy hammer in his hand. His blade light was extremely sharp, illuminating the distance. Yan Yunbei was hiding in Qiutian domain. No one knew where he was, but as a sage, Zhang Daoling could see him clearly. Yan Yunbei's concealment technique was indeed invincible against those below the sage level, but against a sage, it was like a child's play. Zhang Daoling watched from afar and sighed softly. He didn't warn him because it was useless. Yan Yunbei wouldn't leave, and warning him would affect his condition. It was better to let him do it himself. Zhang Daoling wasn't far from Yi Qinghan. He was hiding in the dark in Qiutian domain, waiting for an opportunity to kill him in one strike. At the very least, he wanted to inflict heavy damage. There were still 7 or 8 sages in Jade Court, but they were all decaying. 3 of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors had died in the ancient war. The rest were past their prime and no longer had any combat power. If he could kill Sage Feng Yu, things would be easier for Jade Court. However, Zhang Daoling's thinking was too simple. More than one sage had entered Qiutian domain. They all wanted to seize the ruler's energy, so even if he didn't do it, the other sages would do it. But if he did, the other sages would definitely settle the internal conflict first and eliminate Zhang Daoling first. Even the star-profound sages had come. The secondary universe had a total of 9 sages. Sage Feng Yu, Sage Xian Xian, Sage Tsangmu, Sage Tianzong, Sage Gue Zhu, Sage Qian Yixue, Sage Futian, Sage Redbud, and Sage Xiaoyu. The 9 of them had entered Qiutian domain from all directions and had never gathered together. In the secondary universe, kings never met kings, and sages never met sages. They were not afraid of each other, but once they met, there would be a fight. Unless it was necessary, they would not meet. As long as they did not deliberately reveal their aura, Yi Qinghan and Yan Yunbei would not be able to discover them. They were very fast, and each of them brought a direct descendant or a relative. They were all experts at the limit of the progenitor realm. Some had comprehended 20 to 30% of the sage's power, while others had comprehended 40 to 50%. However, no one had comprehended more than 60%. It was precisely because no one had comprehended 60% of his power that Yi Qinghan had the opportunity. He could use the divine bird sage power to fight against people like Feng Xian without exposing himself as Sovereign Yi. If he were to become any stronger, he would definitely have to expose the divine bird. By then, his combat power would be useless, and the other sages would definitely swarm over to fight for it. Buzz. Whoosh! The sages had yet to arrive. The astral winds were fierce, and their pressure enveloped the original universe. Yi Qinghan narrowed his eyes and looked into the depths. He felt a terrifying energy surging, like a boundless sea, and a huge wave was rushing over from afar. Crack, crack, crack. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and clenched his fists. The divine bird hid in Yi Qinghan's body and did not dare to make the slightest movement. It merged with Yi Qinghan's soul. Boss, when I sneak attack that sage later, you might be injured. Bear with it, don't leave me behind. Supreme Yi was very excited, unprecedentedly excited. It was the first time he attacked as a powerhouse, and he was dealing with Sage Fangyu, one of the 9 great sages in the world. Yi Qinghan pursed his lips and whispered, "Don't be anxious. We'll see how the situation goes. Without my orders, don't act recklessly. Once your position is exposed, we won't be able to escape." If the divine bird's position was not exposed, the sages would not attack. The divine bird restrained its aura. It was most afraid of death. Otherwise, it would have sacrificed itself long ago and let Yi Qinghan refine it. Boom! Yi Qinghan's footsteps crisscrossed, and he held the hilt of his frenzy saber with both hands. Facing a sage, he did not dare to let his guard down. The divine bird's soul was shared with him, and he was borrowing the power of the divine bird sage. However, his soul was ultimately not that of a sage, and he could not borrow much power. At most, it was 40% of Supreme Ye's power. In addition to his own understanding of the sage's power, it was about 60% of the sage's power. However, Yi Qinghan's combat power was not impressive. A sneak attack could seriously injure or even kill a sage, but an open attack would definitely not be a match for him. Therefore, Yi Qinghan's 60% of the sage's power was at best on par with Fang Yu's combat power. The rest depended on his combat experience and will. Yi Qinghan restrained his aura and waited for Sage Fang Yu. However, the first to arrive was not Sage Fang Yu, but the Star Profound Sage. Whoosh! The Star Profound Sage appeared alone in front of Yi Qinghan, his face dignified and dignified. Seeing that Yi Qinghan was preparing for battle, he could not help but sneer in his heart. However, on the surface, he said with a worried expression, "Mansion Lord Yi, you are really muddle-headed. Why did you kill the Heaven Sentinel? You are forcing Sage Fang Yu to make a move." Yi Qinghan opened his eyes slightly. He no longer trusted the Star Profound Sage, but he did not want to fall out with him for the time being, so he would not offend him if he could. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan withdrew his frenzy saber, bowed slightly, and replied, in reply to Lord Sage, "This junior was also forced." Yan Wang Yan Chong, Lord Sentinel, and Qiu de Lu Zong surrounded the crazy mansion Immortal Kingdom. My sect is not a holy land, and it is impossible for 3 of us to completely suppress this sage's eldest disciple. My sect's brother Yunbei's combat power is somewhat inferior to his. If he did not go all out, he would die. Sigh, Xing Xian pretended to be in a difficult position. He sighed and said, "Sage Fang Yu will definitely use this opportunity to steal the sovereign's essence and destroy the crazy mansion. This old man does not even have a reason to act. If this old man had a reason to protect you, perhaps I could have forced Fang Yu to retreat." The meaning behind his words was clear. Yi Qinghan had given him the sovereign's essence, and he would protect Yi Qinghan and the crazy mansion. Fang Yu would definitely retreat. Yi Qinghan smiled. He already understood Xing Xian's meaning, but he could not afford to offend him. He replied firmly, "Senior, there is no need to offend Sage Fang Yu for this junior's matter. This junior understands. Crazy Mansion was forced to act in self-defense. If Sage Fang Yu wants to steal the sovereign's essence, it will be impossible. I have already sent it away. As for destroying Crazy Mansion, he will have to pay the price. Even if I cannot kill him, if someone from Crazy Mansion is lucky enough to enter the Sage Realm in the future, Sage Fang Yu's holy land will definitely be destroyed." Chapter 3009. Yi Qinghan did not budge an inch. He did not give anyone a chance, including the Star Profound Sage. If they wanted to snatch the divine bird, it would depend on whether they could find the location of the divine bird. A strange look flashed in Xing Xian's eyes. He was very impatient. He did not expect Yi Qinghan to be so stubborn. However, He did not think that if Yi Qing Han was not stubborn, he would have refined the divine bird long ago. Why would he need to wait for others to snatch it? Yi Qing Han's moonlight swept past the star-profound sage. He pretended not to know what the star-profound sage was thinking. He secretly said in his heart, "Let's see how long you can pretend." Xing Xian sighed. He did not want to push Yi Qing Han too far now. When Sage Fang Yu came, he would naturally force Yi Qing Han. When that time came, Yi Qing Han would naturally ask for his help. Waiting to reap the benefits of others. Let's see how long you can last, Mansion Lord Yi. The star-profound sage secretly said to himself. He then looked up at Yi Qing Han. With the aura of an elder sage, he said firmly, "Mansion Lord Yi, I will keep watch nearby. If you need anything, you can find this old man. You and I are fated. You can be considered half my disciple. This old man does not want you to be killed by the sage because of an external object." If Yi Qing Han had not seen the star-profound sage's eyes just now, he would definitely believe the star-profound sage at this moment. However, at this moment, he was already vigilant. Hua! Yi Qing Han bowed slightly and said in a deep voice, "Senior, if I have no other choice, I will definitely seek refuge in the Sage Mountain. However, in the early stages, I want to face the sage by myself." The star-profound sage snorted in his heart. However, on the surface, he acted as if nothing had happened. He even looked worried about Yi Qing Han's situation. "Mansion Lord Yi, this old man will take his leave first," the star-profound sage said and then quietly left. It seemed that he did not discover Yan Yunbei's location, or rather, he did not pay attention to Yan Yunbei. Yi Qing Han looked in the direction that the star-profound sage had left in and sighed in his heart. The value of sovereign energy was no small matter. Even sages would be greedy for it. Especially when this lump of energy was placed in the 9 cauldrons by Yu Zun. Its value was even greater. It seemed that he would not be able to escape this calamity. Get ready for battle. If Sage Fang Yu makes the first move, try to kill him in one blow. If we join forces, we can also be considered a sage. If we really fight, we may not lose. Yi Qing Han said in a low voice. Supreme Yi was hiding in Yi Qing Han's body, sharing his soul with Yi Qing Han. Now, he was just waiting for an opportunity to strike. No one left the Crazy Manor Immortal Empire. This was the final battle, and no one wanted Yi Qing Han to bear it alone. Yan Emperor gathered all the older generation experts of the Crazy Manor, including Lu Feng and Chu Shijun Xian, the 2 newcomers. We must do our best in this battle to protect Sovereign Yi. As long as Sovereign Yi is still alive, we will have a chance to elect a ruler. At that time, even death will be an illusion and we can be resurrected. However, if Sovereign Yi is taken away, the entire Kuang Manor will not be able to escape the calamity. The sage will not give us a chance to survive. He will definitely eliminate us, Yan Emperor said in a deep voice. Senior Yan Emperor, there is no need to say more. We have never thought of leaving. I will participate in this battle. Lu Feng said. Chu Shijun Xian nodded and said, Senior, I will participate as well. I also want someone to become a sovereign and revive Lord Liang. Lin Wutian, Gu Qingyu, Shi Gu, and the others of the Crazy Manor were even more unlikely to retreat. The first, second, third, and peripheral experts of the Crazy Manor, totaling more than 30 Ancestor Realm experts, all drew their swords and waited for battle. The first Dark Moon Crown Prince did not want to leave. If they could win, the Crazy Manor would have a chance to elect a sovereign. At that time, all the deaths would be worth it. Yan Emperor's obsession was to revive the 9-colored Brahma heart and his clansmen. Anyone could escape, but not him. He had to protect Yi Qing Han and Supreme Yi. Roar! Yan Emperor pulled out the human sovereign sword and rushed back to the Chaos Heavenly Domain. Open the entrance to the Chaos Heavenly Domain, Yan Emperor said. Father Divine Bird was shocked when he saw all the experts of insane manner rushing back. He shouted, "You lunatics! The sage isn't someone you can fight against. Even if it's the sage's chief disciple, you might not be able to handle him. You'll die if you go." Gu Qingyu and the others looked at the Divine Bird's father coldly and snorted. "Is there any other way? We have run away like cowards in the past few battles, leaving Yi to fight alone. Now that we are on the same level as him, even if we die, I will have no regrets. We climbed from the bottom of a small plane to the top of the universe. We are only half a step away from reaching the sage's position. What is there to be afraid of?" Boom! Mu Zhuang's sword pierced through a meteor and said coldly, "In this life, I have been here and I have fought. Life and death are fated. I will die without regrets. Open the entrance." The Flame Emperor's aura was majestic as he said firmly. The Divine Bird's father did not dare to go against Yan Emperor's will and could only open the entrance. The Chaos Heavenly Domain emitted a dim light. Yi Qinghan was still standing in the distance, waiting for Sage Fangyu. Hua! Yi Qinghan felt the aura behind him. He turned around and saw Yan Emperor, Gu Qingyu, and the others rushing over. He could not help but frown. There is no need to persuade me. If Supreme Yi is lost, there is no need for me to live. Let's bet on luck. I bet that the sage will not dare to fight, Yan Emperor said in a deep voice. Mu Zhuang, Monkey King Qitian, and the others of the older generation said firmly, "Boss, there is no need to persuade him. We will not leave this battle." Hua! Jian Qinxue stepped forward and reached out to Yi Qinghan. She smiled gently and whispered, "Husband, I have never fought with you. Today, I will." Sigh, Yi Qinghan sighed and nodded. He did not force it. "If we really fight later, I hope that you will not fight to the death. Find a chance to escape. We cannot let the crazy manor die," Yi Qinghan said seriously. Everyone nodded without hesitation. No one wanted the crazy manor to die. Hua! Boom! The sage had yet to arrive, but his aura had already arrived. Thousands of waves rolled up. The collision of energy caused the explosion to grow larger and larger. Flames soared into the sky. Yi Qinghan gestured with his hand. "Everyone, step back. I will need you later." Hua! Yi Qinghan held his saber with both hands and stared ahead, afraid that the other party would suddenly attack. "Divine Bird, be ready to attack at any time. Just keep an eye on the sage. If it is not the sage, you don't have to participate. I will do it myself." Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and said in a deep voice. Hua! Whoosh! The crazy manor's experts retreated half the distance of the secondary universe. This distance was indeed far for the progenitor, but it was only enough to block the aftermath of the sage's attack. Roar! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Sage Fangyu appeared in his line of sight. Yi Qinghan could see him clearly. Fang Xian held a sharp sword in his hand, his eyes full of arrogance. Hua! Whoosh! Fang Xian appeared in front of Yi Qinghan at the speed of teleportation. "You are Yi Qinghan?" Fang Xian asked coldly. Yi Qinghan stared at Fang Xian and said indifferently, "Yes." "Hand Yan Yunbei over to me," Fang Xian said coldly. Yi Qinghan sneered and asked disdainfully, "Who do you think you are?" Chapter 30:10. Who do you think you are? Yi Qinghan was full of disdain. The people of the Holy Land were just so. Fang Xian didn't even say a second word. He directly mobilized 70% of his strength, and the sword light tore through the original universe with terrifying power, heading straight for Yi Qinghan. Strength spoke. Whoosh! Boom! Yi Qinghan didn't borrow the power of the Divine Bird. He only used his peak strength. 17 blades slashed out at the same time. 17 figures flashed and overlapped in the blink of an eye, forming a peak blade that could split mountains and rivers. It slashed fiercely at Feng Xian. Bang! Boom! Whoosh! In an instant, the blade and sword collided. The afterglow spread more than 10,000 miles, igniting countless miles of the Qiu Tian domain. Feng Xian felt a piercing pain in his hand. The blade and sword trembled rapidly, and the two's tiger bones cracked. Blood stained the divine weapons, and the universe beneath their feet collapsed. Their black hair danced wildly, shaking the surroundings. Four pairs of eyes looked at each other, and the shock wave blasted the two back. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, Yi Qinghan and Feng Xian flew back almost at the same time. One step could cause the original universe to collapse, and black holes appeared frequently. However, these were man-made black holes, and their lethality was far inferior to the black holes in the Qiu Tian domain. Ka ka ka, Yi Qinghan crushed the original universe under his feet and stood firm. He then pulled out his blade and walked back to where he started. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, Feng Xian retreated more than 1,000 miles. With a flip of his wrist, the sharp sword in his hand slashed through the void. He looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. He didn't expect that 70% of his strength could only injure Yi Qinghan. Interesting. I didn't expect the crazy Manor Lord to be so capable. However, this isn't enough to make you crazy enough to kill the chief disciple of our Holy Land sage. Feng Xian's murderous intent shrouded the surrounding area, and his body actually had the might of a sage. At this moment, his aura soared, and he crossed half the distance of the secondary universe in one step. He appeared in front of Yi Qinghan and said, "I am the grandson of a sage. Feng Xian, I will give you one last chance. Hand over Yan Yunbei, kneel down, and offer up the ruler's energy." Yi Qinghan frowned at Feng Xian and asked coldly, "Are you fucking asleep? I won't hand over Yan Yunbei. I won't hand over the ruler's energy either. Sages have no morals. In my eyes, they are nothing. Take Feng Yu for example. I don't even know how he became a sage. How dare he call himself a sage? Allowing his disciple to commit murder and his grandson to bully others. What right does such a person have to call himself a saint? How dare you?" Feng Xian was infuriated. He charged at Yi Qinghan again with his sword in hand. His sword flashed and a rainbow appeared in the primal universe. This time, he had used his peak strength, and the power of the sages permeated the air. Boom! Yi Qinghan also unleashed his strength and borrowed the power of the sages from the divine bird. His attack was a sure kill. The murderous intent in his eyes was very obvious. After killing Feng Xian, he could focus on dealing with Sage Feng Yu. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh. This time, it seemed that there were not only 17 figures in the primal universe, but 18. This meant that Yi Qinghan had comprehended another move. Whoosh! At that moment, the 17 figures merged. However, the 18th figure did not merge. Instead, it charged at Feng Xian alone. Boom! The original body that had merged with the 17 figures caught up and attacked Feng Xian from the side. Hum! Bang! Boom! Feng Xian held the sword hilt with both hands. The powerful divine sword actually split into two. He held the sword in each hand and used different moves. One sword attacked the other doppelganger, while the one in his right hand pierced toward Yi Qinghan's original body. Boom! The primal universe collapsed. The sword shattered the order. The profound meaning of the sword and the profound meaning of the sword appeared at that moment. They were almost indestructible. The power of the sages reached the end of the universe. Ah! Yi Qinghan roared. His doppelganger and original body attacked at the same time. He had definitely comprehended more than 50% of the power of the sages. In addition to his own strength, he had more than 60% of the power of a complete sage. Open. Bang! Yi Qinghan's veins bulged. He pushed with both arms. It was as if he could move the entire primal universe. The primal universe collapsed around him. The terrifying power shattered everything. At that moment, Feng Xian seemed to have been attacked by a true sage. His organs were displaced and his arms were twisted. His defenses were penetrated by Yi Qinghan's doppelganger and original body at the same time. Whoosh! Splat! Yi Qinghan's inch strike erupted again. He pushed back Feng Xian's arms. His long legs swept out and kicked his waist. Ah! Splat! Feng Xian lost control of his body. The sword in his left hand fell from the impact. The doppelganger unleashed its strongest power and punched Feng Xian's chest. He coughed up blood. Die! Yi Qinghan flipped his wrist and pressed down hard. He chopped off Feng Xian's sword in his right hand and sent him flying again. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's original body threw the blade out. The blade formed by the force pierced through the void and slashed at Feng Xian. Bang! At that moment, Sage Feng Yu, who was countless miles away, smashed Yi Qinghan's attack with his palm. The airwaves surged and sent Yi Qinghan's original body and doppelganger flying. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's original body and doppelganger merged. His body flew in the void of the universe. Just when everyone thought that Feng Xian had escaped death, Yan Yunbei unexpectedly appeared behind him. His dagger drew a perfect arc and slit Feng Xian's throat. Splat! Splat! Feng Xian felt death approaching. He covered his throat with both hands. His aura exploded and blasted Yan Yunbei away. Then, he used the power of the sage to squeeze the poisonous bugs and corpse bugs to the wound on his throat. He did not dare to let the poison attack his heart. Feng Xian's eyes were filled with anger. He retreated frantically. Yan Yunbei gained the upper hand in one move. However, he did not follow up. Instead, he retreated. Bang! Sage Feng Yu stepped forward and slammed his palm on the spot where Yan Yunbei disappeared. The entire original universe shook. Poof! Yan Yunbei was badly mutilated as he rushed out from the void. His eyes were bloodshot and his injuries were quite serious. He had almost lost his life. Fortunately, he had escaped fast enough and retreated after attacking Feng Xian. Otherwise, he would have lost his life here today. At this moment, Sage Feng Yu was shocked. Even Zhang Daoling, who was hiding in the depths, was shocked. He didn't expect Yi Qinghan to defeat Feng Xian in such a short time. If it weren't for Feng Yu's timely intervention, Feng Xian might have died. The Star Profound Sage was also furious. When he saw Yi Qinghan, he knew nothing about the power of the sage. However, in such a short time, he could control so much sage power. It was 50% of the sage's power. There must be other sages behind him. Why haven't they shown themselves yet? The Star Profound Sage frowned and began to be cautious. At that moment, Yi Qinghan had just steadied himself. He stared at Sage Feng Yu and tapped his chest with his fingertips. It was as if he was hinting to the divine bird to get ready to explode. I did not expect the people of the Sage Holy Land to be so weak. Even the sage attacked and interfered with a fair fight. Now I can see why the Sky Sentinel dares to bully the weak. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. The sage has no virtue, which is why the disciples have no virtue, Yi Qinghan said coldly. Chapter 30:11. Yi Qinghan dared to say anything and scold anyone, including the sages. At this moment, all the sages were shocked. Even Zhang Daoling was stunned. What did Yi Qinghan rely on to dare to do this? Yi Qinghan definitely did not know that Zhang Daoling would help him, nor did he know that the people of the Jade Court would help him. The reason he dared to do this was purely because he relied on himself. Together with the divine bird, he could unleash a power that surpassed the sages. Although it was not much, if there were no accidents, he could definitely injure or even kill the sages in one blow. Fang Yu waved his hand and wiped away the poison in Fang Xian's body. He looked around coldly. He did not care about Yi Qinghan, but he cared about the people behind Yi Qinghan. He did not believe that Yi Qinghan dared to clamor or even scold him. Whoosh! The sage's eyes saw through everything, but he could only feel the aura of the sages. He did not know where they were. I wonder which sage's disciple is Yi Qinghan. Why don't you stand out and tell me? Fang Yu said coldly. No one stood out because no one was Yi Qinghan's master, nor was Yi Qinghan's backer. At this moment, even the astral winds in the original universe stopped. No one spoke, and no one dared to speak. The experts of the crazy house were restless and wanted to rush over, but they were stopped by the Yen Emperor. The Yen Emperor knew where Yi Qinghan's confidence came from. Rushing over now was equivalent to courting death. However, things would be different when Yi Qinghan unleashed his power. Don't be impatient. Mansion Lord Yi is confident in dealing with Fang Yu, the Yen Emperor said calmly. Gu Qingyu and the others were shocked. Yi Qinghan was not even a sage. How could he be compared to sage Fang Yu? Senior Yen Emperor, you are not joking, right? Jian Qinshue stood out and asked seriously. The Flame Emperor shook his head and replied faintly, no. As long as Sage Fang Yu dares to get close to Yi Qinghan, he will definitely be severely injured today. Everyone from the crazy manor took a deep breath and waited in silence. Zhang Daoling was also frowning and secretly preparing himself. He might not be able to save the people of Guangfu today, but he had to save Yi Qinghan. As long as Yi Qinghan stepped into the Sage Realm, the Jade Court Holy Land would have a war god. Even if the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors in their twilight years couldn't do anything, the 3rd planet would still have the strength to protect itself. Since the crazed manor didn't move, Zhang Daoling didn't move either. He suspected that Yi Qinghan still had a trump card that he hadn't used yet. He didn't want to mess up Yi Qinghan's plan, nor did he want to mess up his own plan. Sage Fang Yu was getting impatient. He waved his hand and chaos surged in all directions, enveloping Yi Qinghan. If no one shows up, I will kill this so-called Manor Lord Yi, Sage Fang Yu said coldly. Yi Qinghan clenched his fists and gathered his sage power, turning it into a 7-foot berserk force. The divine bird's soul slowly separated from his soul. Its aura grew stronger and stronger until it covered the divine bird's aura. Fang Yu, if you want to make a move, go ahead. Whether or not you can kill me today is another matter. Don't be so sure. Yi Qinghan said coldly, don't think that just because you are a sage, you can kill and bully the common people. Be careful that one day, when someone steps into the sovereign realm, he can kill and trample on you and your holy land without any reason. I don't have a reason. Your manor killed my disciple first, then humiliated me. Is that enough reason to kill you? Sage Fang Yu asked coldly. Yi Qinghan replied disdainfully, if you want to gain the recognition of the world, then find a decent reason before making your move. The Heaven Inspector deserved his death. He led the disciples of the sages to bully my crazed manor and surround us. Since he dared to do so, he should accept crazed manor's challenge. Isn't it right to lose the challenge and die? Are you saying that just because he's a sage's disciple, he should let my manor be captured and killed? That doesn't make sense. Secondly, Fang Xian attacked me. I was forced to defend myself and defeat him. You ambushed me and interfered with my battle. You did something shameless. Don't you deserve to be scolded? Sage Fang Yu was speechless. His old face flushed red. If you, son Fang Xian, can defeat me, I won't even frown if he kills me. If he loses, it's only natural that he's killed. As a sage, you should have the virtue of a sage. Looking at your actions and words, which part of you is like a sage? Dare you ask the world, who has ever respected your virtue as a sage? Do you have the virtue of a sage? Yi Qinghan asked coldly. Sage Fang Yu glared at Yi Qinghan. He wanted to kill Yi Qinghan, but he also wanted to convince others and obtain the sovereign's energy. Unfortunately, there were no such things in the world. Young man, how can my virtue as a sage be judged by a junior like you? If it weren't for me, the secondary universe would have changed a long time ago. Do you think you have the right to be so arrogant? Sage Fang Yu scolded coldly. Your contributions were for self-protection and also for greed. Don't make it sound so righteous. I don't buy it, but how many people in the world would buy it? Look at the world. How many people would sincerely respond to your call? If I were a sage, how many people would respond to my call? Yi Qinghan retorted disdainfully. Sage Fang Yu's lips curled up. Looking at Yi Qinghan's posture, it seemed that he didn't dare to fight. He just wanted to use the virtue of a sage to restrain himself. It wasn't that Yi Qinghan didn't dare to fight, but he didn't want to. If he fought, it would be equivalent to exposing the divine bird's location. He was afraid that the other 8 sages would join forces to take it away. Duh. Yi Qinghan held the sword in front of his chest with both hands and stared at Fang Yu. He was also reminding the divine bird in his heart because Fang Yu's killing intent had already appeared. I don't know how many people you summoned, but I can destroy them with a wave of my hand. As for you, if you want to live and let the insane sect continue to exist, give me the Dominator's energy and I'll spare your life. I can even let you become my disciple. Sage Fang Yu slowly stepped towards Yi Qinghan. It seemed slow, but in fact, he was as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, he appeared not far from Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan watched Fang Yu approach with neither joy nor sadness. Don't even think about the Dominator's energy. You don't deserve it. Whoosh! Boom! Yi Qinghan's body flashed, and 18 figures moved at the same time. However, in the blink of an eye, they all overlapped and formed a war god. Even the doppelgangers merged back together. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan slashed out, and the void collapsed, forming a huge black hole. It caused the original universe to collapse towards this point. It was irreversible. Bang! At this moment, a palm shattered the black hole and directly passed through the order barrier, appearing in front of Yi Qinghan. A firefly dares to compete with the bright moon. Boom! The palm print was not big, but it enveloped Yi Qinghan. It wanted to capture him alive and force him to reveal Sovereign Ye's whereabouts. The sage's attack was swift and decisive, completely detached from worldly affairs. The Seeking Heaven domain, which had been collapsing, began to reverse and was restored in the blink of an eye. Yi Qinghan's attack was like a joke to the sage. However, at this moment, the one attacking Sage Fang Yu was not Yi Qinghan, but Sovereign Yi. Sovereign Ye's aura was restrained, but the sage's power was at its peak. A sage's flaming sword appeared in front of Yi Qinghan's chest. Whoosh! Sage Fang Yu appeared less than 100 miles in front of Yi Qinghan. This distance was nothing to an ancestor, let alone a sage. Hum! Sovereign Yi turned into his human form, and his body spun at high speed. The entire universe collapsed again, and his sword was like a rainbow, instantly taking lives thousands of miles away. Boom! Whoosh! Ft! The flaming sage's sword was unstoppable. It was too fast. The sage's surprise attack, and at such a short distance, no one could escape. The tip of the sword pierced through the defense, and appeared in Sage Fang Yu's body. Old thing, you want to rob me? You must be tired of living. Boom! The sword pierced through Sage Fang Yu's chest, and then the divine bird separated its palms, hitting both of Sage Fang Yu's palms. One came prepared, and the other was careless. The advantage and disadvantage changed instantly. Whoosh! Boom! At this speed, Yi Qinghan punched through the seeking heaven domain the moment the divine bird attacked, and appeared above Sage Feng Yu's head. Sage Feng Yu could not retreat in time, and was hit by both the divine bird and Yi Qinghan. The sage's aura exploded, and his aura soared into the galaxy, sending Yi Qinghan flying countless miles away, his flesh and blood mangled. Chapter 30:12. Boom! A shockwave hit the galaxy, and Yi Qinghan was badly mutilated, flying backward with the storm. Boom! Bang! At this time, the divine bird blocked Sage Feng Yu's attack with both hands, and kicked Sage Feng Yu's chest with both feet. One foot was on his abdomen, and the other foot was on the flaming sage sword in Sage Feng Yu's chest, sinking the sword into his body. Sage Feng Yu roared in anger. The divine bird exploded too quickly, and rushed out of Yi Qinghan's arms. At this time, it could not explode with the power that a sage should have. Die! Little worm! Boom! Supremacy Yi was not going to let it go. He grabbed Sage Feng Yu's arms with both hands, and pushed forward with both knees, hitting him in the face and breaking his nose. Whoosh! Supremacy Yi was as fast as lightning, and the power of the sage dominated everything. He poured all his power into his elbows, and spread his arms, drawing an arc, and hit Sage Feng Yu's head with his elbows. Bang! Sage Feng Yu was hit by Supremacy Yi at such a close distance, and his soul was hit by the power of the sage ruler. At this time, Feng Xian drew his sword and attacked. In order to save Sage Feng Yu, he was not even afraid of death, because if Sage Feng Yu was killed, he would not be able to live. However, Yi Qinghan wasn't going to stay idle. As he flew backward, he twisted his body, shattering the void. Then, he waved his hand and unleashed a saber strike that could shatter all magic and cause the entire domain to collapse. Yi Qinghan's true form leapt into the air, blocking Feng Xian's path. Bang! However, Yi Qinghan did not have half of the sage's power at all. This was his true combat power, and he was sent flying by Feng Xian. The sage's power suppressed each other, and in the blink of an eye, Yi Qinghan's power was destroyed. Thud thud thud, whoosh! The moment Yi Qinghan was sent flying, his body twisted, and he used the force to counterattack, slashing at Sage Feng Yu. Boom! Yi Qinghan's power couldn't even break through Saint Feng Yu's defenseless body. It was blocked by the saint's power, but some of the power still managed to enter Saint Feng Yu's body. Sage Feng Yu spat out another mouthful of blood, worsening his injuries. Fuse! Borrow my body to kill Feng Yu. Yi Qinghan growled. Whoosh! Sovereign Yi retreated, leaving Sage Feng Yu's body. In the blink of an eye, he rushed onto Yi Qinghan's body. Their bloodlines merged, and their souls became one. At this moment, the divine bird sage soul was in the dominant position, and Yi Qinghan and he had long been connected. The combination of Yi Qinghan and his spirit pet was equivalent to increasing the combat strength of two people. Although the divine bird was not good at fighting, Yi Qinghan was. As soon as they fused, their combat strength instantly increased. The divine bird could unleash the true combat strength of a sage. In addition to Yi Qinghan's combat experience and supreme body, their strength now exceeded that of a typical sage, and at least more than 10%. Even though it was only 10%, it could have a fatal effect. If the 9 sages were to fight alone, it would be a lose-lose situation. However, now that Yi Qinghan and the divine bird were to fight alone, Yi Qinghan would definitely win. At this moment, the divine bird was using Yi Qinghan's eyes to look down on all sides, the sage's power vast and mighty. You! Sage Feng Yu clutched his chest, his soul was in pain. At this moment it was good enough that he had 30% of his combat strength, so he immediately retreated. Yi Qinghan and the divine bird were just about to join forces to kill Feng Yu when a few sages came from afar. Their eyes were sharp, and their aura was terrifying. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan and the divine bird immediately retreated more than 1,000 miles. This distance was nothing, but it gave him time to prepare. Whoosh! Sage Feng Yu and Feng Xian fled on the spot, not wanting to meet the other sages at all, afraid that one of them would kill them. Dominator energy can be cultivated to become a sage. Sage Turtle Ancestor carried a turtle shell on his back, staring at Yi Qinghan wretchedly. The greed in his eyes was self-evident. To become a dominator, it seemed that the divine bird was the most important factor. You bunch of idiots, you want to attack me as a group. I am now a sage. My boss and I have merged, at least 120% of a sage's combat strength. Hee, if we really fight, who knows who will live and who will die? Sage Yi bluffed. So what? Do you think you can escape from us? Sage Shutian asked coldly. Yi Qinghan immediately took the lead, waving his hand like a knife, and said calmly, I can't beat you alone, but aren't there still the sages of the third planet? If you want to force me, I'm willing to join forces with the third planet. As someone from the secondary universe, you actually want to work with the sages of the third planet. That's unforgivable. At that moment, a crisp voice was heard. The one and only female sage was indeed unique, but this logic was not complimentary. Yi Qinghan raised his eyebrows and asked, You all want to join forces to kill me, but you don't allow me to think of a way to survive. Is this logic unique to the sages? You think too highly of yourself. No one wants to join forces to kill you. You just need to hand over the dominator energy. You are not a sage, and you don't have the ability to possess a sage's item, Sage Tsangmu said in a low voice. Yi Qinghan smiled. The divine bird merged with his power, and the might of the sage filled the entire Qiu Tian domain, causing the original universe to become restless. You are wrong. At this moment, I am a sage. None of you are a match for me in a one-on-one fight. Even if you join forces, you won't be able to catch me. If I want to leave, the secondary realms and the original universe will be mine. If we have to fight in the end, I can take half of your lives with me. Yi Qinghan's aura was like a rainbow as he faced the 8 sages alone with his blade. The strongest heirs brought by the 8 sages had all disappeared. Yi Qinghan glanced behind him and saw the experts of the crazy house approaching, but he did not stop them. He could choose to fight or not. It all depended on whether these people's greed would make them lose their minds. You are all old and no longer have the virtue of a sage. It's time for a true sage to replace you, and the one who will replace you is my crazy house. This is the will of the Qiu Tian domain. Yi Qinghan's voice was like a bell, vast and mighty in the original universe. Whoosh whoosh. Boom, the Qiu Tian domain churned as the chaos covered the order of all things. The might of the sages was swallowed up. The star profound sage frowned at this moment, but he did not show any hostility. Perhaps he had seen the result, so he did not want to forcefully participate. Zhang Daoling still did not appear. His appearance meant that he was forcing the sages of the secondary universe to join forces. When that happened, the battle would definitely be more tragic. On the contrary, if he did not appear, the 8 sages would scheme against each other, and it was very likely that they would not fight. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan flipped his hand and violently pierced through the Qiu Tian domain, confronting the 8 sages. Senior Star Profound Sage, I am indebted to you. Back then, you bestowed me with the power of the sage's order, which allowed me to reach this step today. You even allowed the divine bird to embark on the path of the sage. This gave me the opportunity to resist. Whether you are sincere or not, my crazy house will accept this kindness. Yi Qinghan looked directly at the Star Profound Sage, hoping that he was a smart person. He was also trying to sow discord between him and the other 7 sages. Whoosh! The other sages turned to look at the star-profound sage, and some even drew their swords to confront him. They were really afraid that the sage behind Yi Qing Han was Xing Xian. If Xing Xian suddenly attacked the other sages and joined forces with Yi Qing Han, the 7 of them might really suffer heavy casualties. The star-profound sage frowned, then smiled slightly. Chapter 30:13. The star-profound sage frowned at first, but he reacted quickly. Yi Qing Han not only accepted his kindness, but also forced the star-profound sage to choose a side. Moreover, he couldn't stand on the opposite side. The star-profound sage laughed a few times and kept a certain distance from the other sages. Little friend Yi, you're really smart. You're the smartest, most treacherous person I've ever seen in the younger generation. The star-profound sage said with a smile. Yi Qing Han smiled indifferently and replied, "Thank you, Lord Sage, for your praise. If I'm not treacherous, how can I be a match for the sages here? Are you saying that we sages are treacherous? Young man, don't be so ruthless. Otherwise, I won't be able to help you." The star-profound sage said with a smile. Yi Qing Han immediately cupped his fists and said, "I don't dare to say that all sages are treacherous, but some of them are. For example, Sage Fang Yu allowed his disciple to commit murder, and then his grandson to commit murder. If he couldn't beat them, he would do it himself. If I say that he's not worthy of being a sage, do you seniors have any objections?" Yi Qing Han's eyes flashed as he stared at the 8 sages. No one's gaze could escape his eyes. Sage Purple Thorn, Sage Xiaoyu, Sage Turtle, Sage Qian Yixue, Sage Tianzong, Sage Futian, Sage Xian, and Sage Tsangmu. The 8 sages each had their own thoughts. They didn't dare to force Yi Qing Han too much, fearing that he would act out of desperation. "So you're saying that we're all sages, and I'm stronger than you. If you're willing to make peace, I naturally won't be your enemy. However, if you force me too much, such as letting your eldest disciples join forces to deal with my crazed manner, I'll choose to perish together with one or several holy lands." Yi Qing Han glanced behind him from the corner of his eyes and said resolutely, "My personality has always been one that would rather die in glory than live in dishonor. I will repay the kindness of those who have shown me kindness. I will fight to the death with those who oppose me. I can guarantee that whoever makes the first move today will be the first holy land to be destroyed in countless years." A threat, a very frank threat. But nothing was more effective than such a threat. The killing intent in Yi Qing Han's eyes was very clear. He glanced at the 8 sages and finally fixed his eyes on the Tsangmu sage and the heaven-blessed sage. "Yan Chong, Qiu De, Lu Zong, are these 3 the sons and disciples of your 2 sages?" Yi Qing Han stared at the 2 and asked coldly. The Tsangmu sage clenched his fist, and sage power surged around him. His dignity had been challenged by a weakling. "So what?" the Tsangmu sage asked coldly. Yi Qing Han's eyes flashed coldly as he replied forcefully, "So what? You know best that these 3 fellows have been bringing people to besiege the Kuang Manor. Do they think the Kuang Manor is a pushover? You're wrong. Since the early days of my crazy manor's development until now, we've never been a pushover. They clearly know that they will face 9 sages today. Do you see any of the older generation of crazy manor retreating? Do you see the 30 million soldiers of my crazy manor immortal kingdom not preparing for war? You and I are both sages. I give you today to apologize to my crazy manor and compensate for our losses. Otherwise, today will be the day you and I declare war." Hiss, Yi Qing Han taking the initiative to declare war made everyone gasp. "Do you have that ability? Even if you borrowed the sovereign's power to become a sage, which one of us hasn't experienced the slaughter of other sages? How can a junior like you compare to our battle strength? We didn't declare war, but an ignorant brat like you did. How laughable. You borrowed the sovereign's power to have the battle strength of a sage. You want to challenge us older sages? What a joke, the heaven-blessed sage sneered coldly. Buzz. Yi Qinghan's saber trembled as he said coldly, whether I have the ability or not, you two will see in the future. You two old fogies, don't bully me because I'm young. Let's see if I can flatten your two holy lands in 10,000 years. Then I'll kill you today. Boom. Whoosh. Two sages stepped out at the same time, wanting to join forces to kill Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan's lips curled up. He looked at the other sages and asked indifferently, do you want to join the battle? Whoosh. The first to retreat was the female sage, Qian Yixue. She was followed by the middle-aged sage, Purple Thorn Sage. Seeing Yi Qinghan's cold gaze, Shutian and Xiao Yu, the two sages, didn't want to provoke him. They both retreated, leaving only the star-profound sage standing in the distance. This sage's attitude was very important. If he helped Yi Qinghan, the heaven-blessed sage and Sangmu sage wouldn't dare to make a move. The star-profound sage's eyes flashed. He didn't like war and liked to play tricks to achieve his goals. He wanted Yi Qinghan's sovereign energy. Now that he had offended Yi Qinghan, he would have to snatch it from him in the future. Yi Qinghan isn't a sage yet, but he already has the combat power of a sage. If I snatch it from him, I'll definitely die today. Based on my understanding of Yi Qinghan, he'll definitely take revenge on me. His first target will definitely be me, so I can't offend Yi Qinghan today, the star-profound sage secretly muttered to himself, but his expression was smiling. No one could tell what he was thinking. Yi Qinghan glanced at the star-profound sage from the corner of his eyes, waiting for his response. Fellow Taoists, Manor Lord Yi is considered half a disciple of this old man. If you bully my disciple, it's the same as bullying me. However, as a sage, I won't go overboard. You must compensate Crazy Manor, or this old man will make a move today. The star-profound sage had his hands behind his back. He was the oldest and had the strongest prestige. He was also the only sage in the ancient immortal subrealm. His attitude was the most important. The Sangmu sage and the heaven-blessed sage were furious. They didn't expect the star-profound sage to help someone who wasn't even a sage. Yi Qinghan smiled but didn't say anything. Now that the star-profound sage had expressed his stance, he felt much more relaxed. Zhang Daoling stood in the distance and didn't show himself. There was no need for him to show himself now. Yi Qinghan was strong enough to protect himself. Letting him operate his crazy manner alone in the subrealm was actually protecting him. Having a connection with the Jade Court Sage realm was definitely not a good thing. Whoosh! Zhang Daoling quietly retreated. At this moment, Yi Qinghan approached aggressively and said coldly to the Sangmu sage and the heaven-blessed sage, since Senior Xing Xian has said so, as a junior, I won't force you. As long as you're responsible for the compensation, there's no need for an apology. Whoosh! Boom! The people of Crazy Manor forced their way over and drew their weapons. There would definitely be casualties in today's battle, but no one would retreat. The two strongest disciples of the sages appeared and waited for the Sangmu sage and the heaven-blessed sage's stance. Compensation, humiliation, a battle. There was absolutely no hope of winning. The two sages couldn't win against Yi Qinghan and Xing Xian, and their strongest disciples might not be able to withstand the siege of so many experts of Crazy Manor. The crazed manor had all the advantages, while the two holy lands had none. Chapter 30:14. The other sages didn't say anything. Xing Xian stood beside Yi Qinghan, giving the Crazy Manor an advantageous position. The Sangmu sage and the heaven-blessed sage clenched their fists. Not only were they angry that Xing Xian didn't give them any face, but they were also angry that Yi Qinghan actually dared to ask for compensation. Because of your disciples and descendants, more than 10 of my Crazy Manor's higher-ups died. I want to ask the two sages, how much are human lives worth in your eyes? Yi Qinghan asked coldly. What kind of cultivation, what kind of price? The Cangmu sage suppressed his anger and replied coldly. Yi Qinghan sneered and said, in my eyes, Kuang Manor is of equal value. Their lives are worth the same as mine. I'll give you a specific number. If you agree, then fine. If you don't agree, then you can use the lives of the strongest heirs you've sent in exchange. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan waved his hand and pointed at the two supreme sages hiding behind them. Although they weren't as strong as Feng Xian, they were definitely among the best below the sages. Although the two experts were hiding, Yi Qinghan had a clear view of them. They simply couldn't escape his sight. How much? The Cangmu sage frowned and asked. Yi Qinghan raised 3 fingers and said indifferently, Progenitor Realm Energy Source, 30,000 pieces. Hiss, at this moment, even Xing Xian sucked in a breath of cold air. 30,000 progenitor energy sources was enough to nurture a sacred land. Yi Qinghan's taste was really too big. I think you're determined to fight. Don't think that you can push your luck just because Daoist Xing Xian helped you. Do you know what 30,000 progenitor energy sources mean? Currently, a sacred ground might not even be able to find 100 progenitor realm energy sources in 100 years, and it would consume 70 to 80 progenitor realm energy sources in 100 years. This means that after 100 years, a sacred ground would be able to obtain less than 10 progenitor realm energy sources. Every 100 years, they would be rewarded with more to those who have made contributions, and there wouldn't be much left. 30,000 progenitor realm energy sources. Even if our 2 sacred grounds combined, we wouldn't have that much left. You're not asking for compensation, you're kidnapping Daoist Xian Xing to fight for yourself, the Cangmu sage replied coldly. The heaven-blessed sage stared at Xian Xing and said in a deep voice, Daoist Xian Xing, this disciple of yours is clearly using you. The star-profound sage looked at Yi Qinghan and shook his head slightly, indicating that if he wanted compensation, he should at least give a more realistic number. 30,000. Even the entire Holy Land did not have that much savings. The star-profound sage suggested with a smile, how about this, Manor Lord Yi, for this old man's sake, 5,000 for each of us. This way, both of us can bear it. As the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than to keep it alive. There's no need to make things so tense. We're all sages, and we still have a long way to go in the future. The 2 sages were furious and glared at Xian Xing. 5,000 progenitor realm energy sources, even if they were inferior goods, were of immeasurable value. Giving them to Kuang Manor was equivalent to pushing Kuang Manor to the level of a sacred ground. Daoist Xian Xing, you have to think carefully, the Cangmu sage said in a deep voice, clenching his fists. This old man has thought very clearly. Cangmu, don't you remember that one year, you fought with my Sage Mountain for a supreme-grade progenitor realm energy source? You killed more than 300 of my Sage Mountain's experts. If you don't cough up some blood this time, I might as well join forces with Manor Lord Yi to uproot your 2 sacred grounds. Xian Xing's aura suddenly turned cold and said directly. It turned out that the Xian Xing sage and Cangmu had a grudge to begin with. It was just that he borrowed Yi Qinghan's power this time to take revenge. Sages weren't sages. They weren't emotionless, but they had learned to endure. There were probably only a few people who could truly be considered sages. The 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. At the very least, Zhang Daoling wasn't a true sage. 5,000 was the limit that the 2 sacred grounds could afford. Xian Xing didn't want to fight, but he also wanted to make the 2 sacred grounds cough up blood. Naturally, he asked for a suitable number for Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan didn't understand the market, but when he saw the 2 sages' faces turn green, he immediately knew that this number was very appropriate. Then 5,000 each. The other sages have all retreated. If you want to fight, I'll accompany you. If you don't want to, then compensate, Yi Qinghan said coldly. The Tsang-mu sage and the heaven-blessed sage looked at each other with murderous intent in their eyes. The sage sword in their hands pierced through the primal universe. Woo woo woo, whoosh whoosh whoosh. Astral winds blew in all directions as the four confronted each other. Their auras leaked out, and the majestic might of the sages surged. Roar! Boom! The experts of the insane mansion all drew their swords and revealed their divine weapons. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's left hand shook, and directly blasted the two strongest sons of the sages out. Immediately after, the Star Herder progenitor walked out, but there was an extremely handsome young man beside him. He wore sacred ground clothes and looked majestic. Choose to pay 5,000, or choose to throw away these two lives. I'll give you a chance to choose, Yi Qinghan said calmly. Tsang-mu's Lu Su was Lu Zong's nephew. Although he was a generation younger, his talent was the one that the Tsang-mu sage saw the most. He had consumed far more than 5,000 pieces of progenitor energy origins in his lifetime. Heaven-blessed Yen was the youngest son of the heaven-blessed sage. He had condensed almost all of the sage's essence, and the resources he had consumed were definitely more than 5,000 progenitor energy origins. Moreover, he was the youngest son of the heaven-blessed sage. Both of them had 40% of the sage's combat strength. They were very powerful existences, and were also the most likely existences to become the second sage of the sacred ground. Yi Qinghan couldn't bear to see the people of the insane mansion die, or else he would have already started the war. However, the heaven-blessed sage was even more reluctant to let go of his son, heaven-blessed Yen, who he had obtained at an old age. Hiss! The heaven-blessed sage took a deep breath and looked at the young man beside the Star Herder. His fingertips trembled slightly, and he had no choice but to give in. Because if that young man joined the war, he could really kill heaven-blessed Yen and Tsang-mu Lu Su with the help of the experts of the insane mansion. Alright, 5,000, then 5,000. The Tsang-mu sage and heaven-blessed sage took a deep breath at the same time and agreed to Yi Qinghan's request. Whoosh! The two reluctantly handed over 5,000 progenitor energy origins. Although they were of different grades, they were all of high quality. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and took away 10,000 progenitor energy origins. This didn't mean that the insane mansion could give birth to 10,000 progenitor realm experts, but it might give birth to 3 to 7 experts with 30 to 40% of the sage's power, or at most 50%, like Feng Xian. At this time, the number of progenitor realm experts didn't mean how powerful a force was. The real battle of life and death was between the sage and those who had grasped 30 to 50% of the sage's power. Let's go. The heaven-blessed sage took a deep breath and said to heaven-blessed Yen. Whoosh! Whoosh! Tian Zongyan rushed through the air, but at this time, a figure blocked his path. It wasn't Yi Qinghan, nor was it the Flame Emperor. It definitely wasn't the sage, but the Tao Sky Extreme Saint. Bang! The two palms collided, and Extreme Saint Tao Tian disappeared without a trace. Before anyone could react, he had already appeared beside Tsang-mu Lu Su. Boom! The two brushed past each other, and Tsang-mu Lu Su's figure shifted and appeared in front of the Tsang-mu sage. A drop of blood appeared on the sword in his hand. Extreme Saint Tao Tian was injured, but at this moment, he had also left the Qiu Tian region. Even Xing Xian couldn't find his location. Tsang-mu and heaven-blessed sages were shocked, and immediately knew that things weren't good. They immediately said, "Check your ancestral rings." Whoosh! The two opened their ancestral rings at the same time, and it was almost empty. The real treasures were all gone, and their faces turned ugly. Chapter 30:15. The two sages, Tian Zongyan, Tsang-mu, and Lu Su's faces turned green. Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven's name was not fake. He could even steal the primal chaos heavenly domain, let alone the ancestral ring. Damn you, Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven. You've angered me time and time again. Do you really think I'm not angry? Tian Zhongyan's palm grabbed the air, causing the void to collapse. The boundless heaven domain began to collapse towards his palm, trying to pull extreme Saint Thieving Heaven back. Whoosh! Boom boom boom, in an instant, the origin universe seemed to form countless paths of reincarnation. No one could escape his palm. This was a sage. The shockwaves quickly spread to where the insane manners experts were. Whoosh! Boom! Yi Qinghan waved his hand and covered the boundless heaven domain. The sage's technique enveloped it, forcibly blocking the boundless heaven domain from collapsing. The star-profound sage also waved his hand and saved Xing Mu and the youth beside him with a smile. He probably guessed that the item inside Tian Zhongyan's ancestral ring must be very valuable. Otherwise, Tian Zhongyan wouldn't be so flustered. Sangmu Sage was also enraged. He leaped into the air and wanted to chase after extreme Saint Thieving Heaven. However, other than the sage's techniques that were stirring up chaos, extreme Saint Thieving Heaven was nowhere to be seen. Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven had escaped. Yi Qinghan laughed happily. It was not bad to make these sages nauseated. Ha 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 ha, Yi Qinghan laughed at the sky and swept away everyone from insane manner. He then cupped his fists at the star-profound sage. Thank you, senior. If you need anything in the future, feel free to find me at Insane Manor. You've given me 2 favors, and I'll return 4 favors in the future. Xing Xian also had a smile on his face as he said faintly, then this old man will remember it. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan took away everyone from Insane Manor, while Xing Xian took away his 2 disciples. Only the 2 sages, Tian Zhongyan, and Sangmu and Lu Su were left in Qiu Heaven. Their expressions were ashen since they couldn't find Ultimate Saint Thieving anywhere. Announce that whoever kills Ultimate Saint Thieving Heaven, this old man is willing to take out 1,000 high-rank Ancestor Realm energy sources as a reward. If it's someone from the younger generation, this old man is willing to take him in as a closed-door disciple, Sage Tian Zong said angrily. Tian Zhongyan took a deep breath, bowed, and said, yes. Lu Su, you go and announce this kill order as well. My conditions are the same as Taoist Tian Zong's, that Sangmu Sage said gloomily. Heaven-blessed Lu Su bowed and replied, yes. 2,000 high-grade Ancestor Realm energy sources were enough to attract the sages, but to kill Thieving Heaven, they had to find him first. Yi Qinghan sealed the Seeker Heaven and Chaos Heaven and returned to Crazy Manor. Phew, exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, his entire body was drenched in cold sweat. Everything would be fine as long as those sages could calm down. He was truly afraid that this group of people would join forces and attack the Crazed Manor Immortal Kingdom. If that happened, the Crazed Manor would be completely wiped out. Yan Emperor and the others also breathed a sigh of relief. Crazy Manor now had a sage. Although he was a fake sage, he was still the strongest among the sages. The next step is to capture Primordial Yin Yang. Announce that Crazy Manor is willing to offer 100 Ancestor Realm energy sources as a reward. Whoever captures Primordial Yin Yang and sends him back to Crazy Manor will get the 100 Ancestor Realm energy sources. Yi Qinghan stabilized the situation, and the first thing he wanted to do was to capture Primordial Yin Yang alive. Leave this to me, Yan Yunbei said without hesitation. Okay. Yi Qinghan immediately agreed and took out 10,000 Ancestor Realm energy sources. From today onwards, we will no longer nurture new Ancestor Realm experts. We want the essence, not quantity. Crazy Manor must have 2 sages and above. Otherwise, our lives will always be in the hands of others. Yi Qinghan looked at the people of Crazy Manor and said in a deep voice, I hope everyone will support me. The Ancestor Realm energy will be given to all of you, but you can't share it with others. You must refine it yourselves and break through to the Sage Realm. Even if you can't reach the Sage Realm, you must at least have 30 to 40% of the sage's strength. Phew, no one from the crazed manor rejected Yi Qinghan's suggestion. At this point, only a sage could play a key role. Only when the crazed manor had a true sage would they be able to hire anyone from the 3 secondary realms. Who would dare to stop them? Whoosh! Yi Qinghan distributed the ancestor realm energy to Yan Emperor, Gu Qingyu, Mu Zhuang, Lin Wutian, Jian Qinxue, Lu Feng, Chu Shijunxian, and an Yu Tian Chen. You all cultivate first, I will go to the 3rd planet. Yi Qinghan took away more than 1,000 ancestor realm energy sources. It wasn't because he was selfish, but because he wanted to break through to the sage realm with his own strength. By then, he would be invincible with the help of the divine bird. With him alone, the 9 sages wouldn't dare to act recklessly. Yan Emperor frowned at Yi Qinghan and asked, "Why are you going to the 3rd planet now? Invite a sage." "We don't have one, we have to rely on ourselves." "How long will it take for us to have our own sage?" Yi Qinghan replied solemnly. Gu Qingyu hesitated and asked, "Are you sure you can invite a sage from the 3rd planet? Furthermore, if you leave alone now, wouldn't it be more dangerous if the other sages surround you?" "It's fine, no one can kill me if I want to escape," Yi Qinghan said with certainty. Whoosh! Just as Yi Qinghan was about to leave, a figure appeared outside of the heaven-suppressing palace. Everyone focused their gaze. Who else could it be but Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven? Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven's face was filled with a wretched aura and a wicked smile. It seemed like he really did steal something good. Hee, I didn't think that the ruler's energy would become a sage. What a pity. What a pity. Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven smiled wickedly. Whoosh! Paragon Yi left Yi Qinghan with a flaming sword in his hand and looked at Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven in an even more wretched manner. Yes, it is quite a pity. You old wretch wanted to steal from me, but unfortunately, you don't have the ability to fulfill your wish. If you really can't do it, you can give me what you stole and I will help you ascend to the ruler level. By then, my boss. The divine bird said proudly. Humph, Yi Qinghan snorted coldly. Ugh. I am the 2nd. My boss is the real boss and you are the 3rd. Paragon Yi immediately changed his words. Even if the divine bird became a ruler, it would still have to live under Yi Qinghan's shadow. This was mainly because the two had a very deep relationship, just like an elder brother and a younger brother. No matter how strong the divine bird was, it still subconsciously respected Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan then smiled. You two cultivate first. Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven, if what you stole is really a sage's knowledge, why don't you share it with Quang Manor? We can work together. If you don't want to work with me, I will have the sage's knowledge when I return. Yi Qinghan said calmly. What's in it for me? Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven grinned wickedly. Yi Qinghan raised his brow and said, the benefit is that everyone will have bad luck. You might be having a good time now, but it doesn't mean that it will be the same in the future. When you are unlucky, Quang Manor will help you. Chapter 30:16. Not only was Extreme Holy Dao Sky's cultivation extraordinary, his space profound was not inferior to the sages. It would be very difficult for the sages to kill him, they might not even be able to catch up to him. However, if the two sages worked together, he would have no chance of escaping. The unlucky chance was obviously being surrounded by the sages. Although the probability was very small, it did not mean that it was impossible. This time, he had offended the heaven-blessed sage and Sangmu sage. It was only a matter of time before he was surrounded. Extreme Holy Dao Sky looked at Yi Qinghan's determined expression and did not immediately agree. Who would be willing to share the treasures that they had painstakingly stolen just like that? However, at this moment, Yan Yunbei returned and whispered something in Yi Qinghan's ear, causing Yi Qinghan to reveal a smile. Senior Holy Dao Sky, I have a piece of news that I think you will be very interested in. Yi Qinghan said with a smile. Extreme Holy Dao Sky looked at Yi Qinghan in surprise and asked, "What news?" The two sages, Tsang Mu and Heaven Blessed, have offered a reward of 2,000 high-grade Ancestor Realm energy sources. Their goal is to capture you and bring you back to the Holy Land. 2,000 is probably a very large number. If you leave the crazy manor, there will be no place for you in the entire universe. Yi Qinghan said calmly. Hua! Extreme Holy Dao Sky immediately took a step back vigilantly and stared coldly at Yi Qinghan, Yan Emperor, and Yan Yunbei. Only these three could cause him harm. Yi Qinghan smiled faintly and said, "It's just 2,000 Ancestor Realm energy sources. Indeed, this is a large number, but it is not enough to make me unable to distinguish between gratitude and enmity. I, Heaven Blessed, and Tsang Mu are like fire and water. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Senior Holy Dao Sky need not worry too much, I will not attack you for 2,000 Ancestor Realm energy sources. It is the same no matter how much they offer. Now, in the three great secondary realms, only the crazy manor is your foothold. 3 subworlds, I can go wherever I want. What can the sage do to me?" Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven said with disdain. Yi Qinghan replied with a smile, "I don't believe it. Let's not talk about the sage, just the sage's 9 strongest disciples or heirs are enough to seriously injure you. If they pursue you year after year, how long can you escape?" Buzz, Yi Qinghan smiled as he stroked his manhood. Sovereign Yi Qinghan also looked at Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven with a wretched expression, waiting for Yi Qinghan's order. Ultimate Saint Thieving Heaven seemed to have been forced into a dead end. If Yi Qinghan and Sovereign Yi continued to pursue him, then he really would have no way out. Good, good, good. Brat, this old man has played with eagles my entire life, but I didn't expect to be pecked blind by one. I taught you the 9 levels of space profundity, but you actually used it to threaten me. Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven sighed. Yi Qinghan smiled and replied, "Senior, don't say that. Junior is just giving you a friendly reminder. Even if you leave in same manner, I will still watch you leave and won't attack you. However, if you're in trouble, I might not necessarily come to your rescue." Humph, Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven groaned as his white beard straightened. "Fine, we'll share. However, if I can't become a ruler and one of you becomes one, you must unconditionally agree to 3 of my conditions." Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven raised 3 fingers. Yi Qinghan frowned and said indifferently, "As long as it doesn't harm Insane Manor's interests, we can agree to the 3 conditions." After the conditions were agreed upon, Extreme Saint Thieving Heaven shared the sage insights he stole from Tian Zhongyan and Tsang Mu Lu Su's ancestral rings. However, it was only half of the insights and secret methods. Even so, if he could successfully comprehend it, it would mean that Insane Manor would have more experts like Tsang Mu Lu Su and Tian Zhongyan. Tsang Mu Lu Su and Tian Zhongyan weren't weak. Even Yi Qinghan and Flame Emperor weren't their match right now unless they used Sovereign Yi. Yi Qinghan didn't waste any more time and headed north. He used Northern Xiong Immortal Kingdom's Chaos Heavenly Domain to enter Seeking Heaven Domain. He retracted his aura and didn't give anyone a chance to capture his aura or location. Whoosh! Within Seeking Heaven Domain, Yi Qinghan was basically teleporting forward. However, due to the interconnection of the 3 great subworlds in the vast Origin universe, there were experts roaming everywhere. The slightest carelessness would expose his identity. Yi Qinghan specialized in traversing dangerous places. These places had never been visited by anyone before and were in the most primitive state of primal chaos. It was almost impossible for progenitor realm experts to survive, but now that Yi Qinghan had borrowed the power of a sage, he was able to traverse the most primitive of primal chaos with ease. The divine bird was finally free and joined hands with Yi Qinghan to explore the most primitive universe. There were some progenitor energy sources here that hadn't been plundered. However, there were many dangerous primordial cracks and black holes that could devour progenitors and sages. Even sages weren't willing to come here. The most frightening thing was that there were some strange creatures here. They were all primitive creatures that were born with the birth of the universe. They were strange, traceless, and could kill without a trace. It was impossible to guard against them. Some of the floating meteorites were made of very special materials. They were natural objects that could be used to forge ancestral weapons or sage weapons. However, there were some strange primitive creatures floating around them. They were very small, so small that it was impossible to guard against them. Yi Qinghan was unaware that a few poisonous insects had drilled into his body. It wasn't easy for him to use the divine bird strength to force them out of his body. He was so frightened that his face turned pale. The poisonous creatures and strange creatures that were forced out flashed and disappeared. They didn't die and their vitality was exceptionally strong. Damn, what the hell are these? Yi Qinghan looked at the many floating meteorites but didn't dare to move. He was somewhat unwilling. Yi Qinghan frowned and whispered, they should be accompanying objects of the origin universe. Their strength is very pure from the origin universe. Then we're giving up on these refining materials just like that? The divine bird touched its nose and asked unwillingly. Yi Qinghan nodded. He had no other choice but to give up. Wait until I find Sage Zhang Daoling and ask for his opinion. Let's leave first. Yi Qinghan stared at the floating meteorites and whispered. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan increased his speed again and dodged the universe cracks. There were a few times when he almost fell into a seemingly weak black hole. Although the black hole was only the size of a wash basin and didn't cause any harm when it wasn't activated, once it was activated, it could instantly devour an ancestor. Some black holes could even devour sages. Although these places were dangerous, they wouldn't expose their location. They could even find some ancestors' energy sources, and their grades weren't low. Yi Qinghan took away dozens of ancestors' energy sources. They were all high-grade goods. He sped along the way and didn't delay his treasure hunt. After several months of traveling, Yi Qinghan and the divine bird actually found a cloud. Clouds had never been found in the Qiu Tian domain, but in this most primitive land of chaos, there was a pure white cloud. It floated in the primitive land of chaos and its shape was constantly changing. It seemed to want to leave that place but was entangled by something. Yi Qinghan curiously circled around and came behind the white cloud. He actually found that the white cloud was entangled by a primitive black hole. This wasn't a man-made black hole, but a naturally formed black hole. Its power was terrifying, and even sages might not be able to withstand it. However, this white cloud happened to be blocking the entrance of the black hole. The black hole couldn't devour it, but the white cloud couldn't leave either. Fuck, this is good stuff. Supreme Martial Artist Yi shouted excitedly. Yi Qinghan nodded. If he still couldn't tell that it was good stuff at this time, it would be too laughable. This white cloud has its own consciousness. It's not dead. Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. Chapter 30:17. Whoosh! The white cloud surged, but it could not break free from the black hole's shackles. The black hole could not swallow it either, causing it to be blocked and unable to expand or shrink. Yi Qinghan and the divine bird were excited. Such a white cloud was definitely something extraordinary. Get it down. Sovereign Yi asked excitedly. Yi Qinghan raised his eyebrows and said without hesitation, aren't you talking nonsense? Something that can block a primordial black hole will definitely not lose to a sage's item. Have you seen me throw something like that away? Although the meteorite material was good, it was still an inanimate object. However, this white cloud was not. Combine. Let's take a risk and see if we can pull this white cloud out. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and said firmly. Yi Qinghan was probably the most daring among the progenitors to snatch food from the black hole. Whoosh! Boom! Yi Qinghan's aura burst forth and merged with the divine bird's soul. The sage's might was vast and mighty, and it seemed to have alarmed the little white cloud. Whoosh! The little white cloud kept surging and changing shape, as if it was asking for help. If you can understand me, give me some response. Yi Qinghan slowly stepped towards the little white cloud and said seriously. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Buzz buzz buzz. The little white cloud surged even more crazily, constantly responding to Yi Qinghan. It did not know how long it had been trapped here. No one had discovered it until now. Even the sage would not come to this place. Once it was trapped here, it might be trapped here forever. Hiss hiss hiss. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. The sage's power filled his limbs and bones. He could not see the black hole now because it was blocked by the little white cloud. If I pull the little white cloud out, the black hole will definitely be unblocked. The sudden burst of power might drag me in as well. Yi Qinghan thought to himself. He and the divine bird were slightly stronger than the sage. They should be able to break free from the black hole's shackles. Yi Qinghan pondered for a long time. He was still unwilling to give up on the little white cloud. I'll save you later. Once the black hole holds me back, you must not give up on me. Yi Qinghan whispered. Buzz buzz buzz, the little white cloud continued to bend, as if it was nodding its head. Yi Qinghan gritted his teeth and stretched out his hands. Veins popped out all over his body as he took root in the starting ground and grabbed the little white cloud. When he touched the little white cloud, he realized that it was not a pure white cloud. Instead, it was a material with form and substance. It was delicate and smooth. It looked thin, but it was unknown how dense its internal mass was. Let's work together, Yi Qinghan said through gritted teeth. Get ready, to exert force, boom. Yi Qinghan had crushed the primal universe's primordial chaotic space, elongating the little white cloud by half a meter. However, there seemed to be a force behind it that could devour an endless amount of matter. Its devouring power was despairing. He couldn't pull it out. Roar! Screech. At this moment, the god-devouring eagle and the rainbow snake exploded at the same time, transforming into a pair of wings that pulled Yi Qinghan back. The power of the sage filled the surroundings as if to dominate everything, but it could not dominate the primordial black hole. Ah! Roar! Yi Qinghan roared angrily, exploding with all his strength. Blood spurted out. His face was ferocious as he wrapped his arms around the little white cloud, trying to tear it out by force. Hiss hiss hiss, whoosh! The little white cloud was also tightly wrapped around Yi Qinghan, being pulled out bit by bit. The little white cloud was not big, but it was tightly wrapped around by the black hole. It was like a person's but being stuck in a swamp. The more he pulled, the stronger the devouring power. Roar! The rainbow snake was also exploding, frantically tugging at Yi Qinghan's waist. Its fangs pierced through the primordial chaos, and the god-devouring eagle's wings were almost broken. The divine bird and Yi Qinghan had completely merged, exploding with power that surpassed the sage. The sage's might was vast and mighty in the long river of chaos, dominating all laws and logos of order. The little white cloud was being pulled out bit by bit. One could almost see the little white clouds, but... Boom! Crack crack crack. The primordial chaos kept collapsing, and the black hole formed a vortex that kept sucking in. The surrounding space began to collapse, and the black hole grew bigger and bigger. If the little white cloud was not pulled out soon, Yi Qinghan would not be able to escape today. The black hole began to expand at a speed visible to the naked eye, and Yi Qinghan's hair stood on end. Charge, more force. The low roar was filled with panic and despair. The loss was not worth it this time. A soul-stirring suffocation enveloped Yi Qinghan, and the black hole expanded to his feet. Whoosh! Boom! Yi Qinghan forcefully pulled the little white cloud more than 10 meters away, but the black hole also extended about 10 meters, and it was still expanding rapidly. The little white cloud could not block the black hole, and if it failed to break free, it would not even have the chance to coexist with the black hole. Hua! The entire little white cloud looked slightly bigger than a person, and at that moment, it completely covered Yi Qinghan. It looked like a suit of armor, light and weightless. It took the initiative to merge with Yi Qinghan, and at that moment, Yi Qinghan became much lighter. Against the Tao of heaven, 5 elements no longer exist, Yi Qinghan roared. His entire body stood outside the 5 elements, but the suction produced by the black hole was still there. It was just that it had weakened a lot. Yi Qinghan was overjoyed, and he instantly retreated half the distance between the secondary universes. The black hole was spinning at high speed, and the huge vortex could decompose all matter. Even huge meteorites, which were made of special materials, were decomposed instantly. The huge black hole was still exploding, and without the little white cloud blocking it, it expanded to a radius of more than 10,000 miles in an instant, swallowing the original universe. Yi Qinghan stood far away in the universe, but he was still frightened as he watched. Time flew by, and when the original black hole expanded to the point where it could swallow an entire secondary universe, it started to shrink rapidly, as though it had eaten its fill. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath, and his forehead was sweating profusely. Fortunately, he had escaped. Otherwise, if he had been dragged in today, he wouldn't have been able to escape. The original black hole was indeed terrifying. Hua! Yi Qinghan and the divine bird separated, and the colorful snake and god-swallowing eagle returned to the bloodline. The little white cloud also immediately left Yi Qinghan's body and wandered around Yi Qinghan, as though it was thanking its benefactor. Yi Qinghan and the divine bird both tilted their heads and looked at the little white cloud. Its size was slightly bigger than Yi Qinghan's, but it could still shrink to the size of a fist. It was still the little white cloud after all. What are you? The divine bird asked curiously. I'm knowledgeable, but I don't recognize you, little fellow. Hua! The little white cloud tumbled. It had consciousness, but it couldn't speak, and it didn't have soul waves, so it couldn't communicate. Yi Qinghan reached out his hand, and the little white cloud automatically ran to Yi Qinghan's palm, as light as a feather. Interesting, Yi Qinghan said, looking at the little white cloud with a smile. This is the first time I've seen such a substance. I wonder what it can be used for. Yi Qinghan and the divine bird were both sizing up the little white cloud, but they couldn't see through it. I'll bring it back to the 3rd planet and see if Sage knows what it is, Yi Qinghan whispered. The divine bird asked in surprise, is it willing to go with us? Hua! Hua! Wang! The little white cloud tumbled in Yi Qinghan's hand, and it seemed to agree. If it still doesn't work, just delete the bookshelf and bookmark it again. Don't scold me anymore. I can't make a portion of the reader's updates be wrong while most of them are correct. I'm also a scapegoat. I've been scolded every time I do it. I've done it 7 or 8 times in the past few days. My face has been dyed black. Also, I don't have any more chapters today. I'll make up for the chapters 10 tomorrow. As for how much I'll make up for, that will depend on how much I can write. Chapter 30:18. Little white cloud rolled around in Yi Qinghan's hand. Although it could not speak, it was certain that it had its own consciousness. Whoosh! Just as Yi Qinghan was about to place it on his shoulder, little white cloud turned into a bracelet and clasped around his right hand like a gauntlet. It was very light, but the defense and strength of his right hand instantly increased by 100-fold. The 20% of the sage's power that he had previously comprehended could now explode with 40% of his power. Hiss! Yi Qinghan sucked in a breath of cold air and clenched his fists. He looked at little white cloud on his right wrist in shock. He could not imagine what it was that it could maintain 100-fold of his power. I wonder if the divine bird and I combined, can it maintain 100-fold of my power? If it can, won't I have power second only to a ruler? Yi Qinghan looked at Sovereign Yi excitedly. Sovereign Yi also felt Yi Qinghan's excitement and immediately fused with Yi Qinghan. When Yi Qinghan fused with the divine bird's soul, Yi Qinghan could clearly feel that his combat power did not increase by 100-fold. It did not even increase by 10 or 5 times. At most, it increased by 30%. Don't underestimate this 30%. This meant that Yi Qinghan now had power that far exceeded that of a sage. It was 2 or even 3 times that of a sage. 2 or 3 sages working together would definitely not be able to withstand Yi Qinghan's crazy slaughter unless 9 sages worked together to attack. Unfortunately, I'm not a sage. The soul that fuses with you is not my own. I can't completely adapt to it. If I were a sage, I could easily defeat 3 sages working together. However, after fusing with you, my combat power will at most be equal to 3 sages, or even slightly inferior, Yi Qinghan said softly. Sovereign Yi immediately separated from Yi Qinghan's soul and said disdainfully, "Show off. Go ahead. A sage having 3 times the power is already very exaggerated. Usually, kings don't see kings, and sages don't see sages. Aside from a few insidious sages, who would team up against us?" Hee hee, Yi Qinghan giggled and stroked little white cloud with satisfaction. He said gently, "Too bad you can't speak. Otherwise, you could tell me who you are. But do you have any other abilities?" Whoosh! Whoosh! The little white cloud instantly split into 4 and wrapped around Yi Qinghan's arms and legs, forming 4 white bracelets. The bracelets were connected by a white silk-like thread that ran through Yi Qinghan's arms and body, but was covered by his clothes. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan pulled open the cuffs and found the white silk. It ran from the shoulder to the other arm, and the straight line under the throat sank down to the sides of the chest, all the way to the ankles of the feet, forming 2 anklets. Holy shit, is this even possible? Yi Qinghan felt that the white cloud had already fused with him, and it was even more successful than the divine bird's fusion with him. It was as if they were one, and the power it provided was far more terrifying than the one provided by Supreme Being Yi. Was there anything more powerful than sovereign energy? Could it be that this white cloud was also sovereign energy? And it was even purer than the divine bird's sovereign energy? The black hole can hold on to sovereign energy? Yi Qinghan thought to himself, his eyes filled with shock. But if little white cloud was sovereign energy, then it could be explained. Otherwise, why would the black hole keep pestering it? Are you sovereign energy? Yi Qinghan asked in a low voice. Little white cloud didn't react, but the power it transmitted was very obvious. Yi Qinghan saw that little white cloud didn't react, so he didn't think too much about it. He lifted his feet and rushed into the distance, but using 80% of his power was much faster than he expected. Whoosh! In an instant, he crossed the distance of a secondary universe. This was even more terrifying and exaggerated than the ultimate space profound. Even Yi Qinghan was stunned. Whoosh! Supreme Being Yi chased over as well. With a flash of his figure, he appeared right beside Yi Qinghan. He looked at Yi Qinghan in astonishment and asked in bewilderment, "Are you trying to ascend to the heavens? You're at your peak speed." "I want to see what the speed of a sage is like," Yi Qinghan said solemnly. Whoosh! Whoosh! Supreme Ye's figure flashed, and the might of a sage was vast and mighty. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. Yi Qinghan, with the support of little white cloud, was left far behind by Supreme Yi. He couldn't catch up at all. Although the divine bird's combat power was very weak, it was still a divine bird. He was best at speed. He had the true speed of a sage, and he was faster than the average sage. So in the blink of an eye, Yi Qinghan lost sight of Supreme Ye's shadow. Yi Qinghan touched his nose. He had no choice but to stop and look around. Whoosh! Supreme Yi suddenly returned to Yi Qinghan's side with a wretched smile on his face. Hee, I've been suppressed by you for countless years, and now I've finally suppressed you. This feeling is really fucking awesome, Supreme Yi said proudly. Yi Qinghan smiled awkwardly. The two of them were of the same age and had been together since childhood. Supreme Yi's realm had always been able to keep up, but his strength had not improved. Now, he had finally improved. He suppressed him with the body of a sage, and his speed far surpassed him. Alright, you win, Yi Qinghan shrugged and replied. Supreme Yi's eyes flashed as he said flatteringly, why don't we exchange positions? I'm the boss now, and you're the second. Yi Qinghan touched the corner of his mouth, stared at Supreme Yi, and sneered. Are you sure? Supreme Yi immediately shook his head and said, I'm not sure. Isn't this a discussion with you, boss, TSK? Yi Qinghan sneered and reached out to slap the back of Supreme Yi's head. He said in a muffled voice, don't be so cocky. Wait until you become a ruler, then you can be arrogant with me. At that time, I'll admit that you're the boss. It's a deal. Let's go. Supreme Yi immediately stepped into the distance valiantly and spiritedly. Boom! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan and Supreme Yi joined forces and stepped into the distance. Along the way, they found some progenitor realm energy sources, and their quality was not bad. There were at least a few hundred of them. These places were the original chaotic lands that no one had stepped into. There were more primordial cracks and black holes. Even if the two of them joined forces and had the support of Little White Cloud, they did not dare to recklessly challenge the power of the primordial black holes. The two of them rushed all the way and came to the entrance of the chaotic heavens. The other paths were cut off, so they could only enter the secondary universe. Then, they passed through the secondary universe and entered another secondary universe to enter the heaven-seeking domain. From there, they entered the secondary saint realm. They quietly entered the chaotic heavens of the secondary universe. Yi Qinghan did not want to cause trouble, but the chaotic heavens still sensed Yi Qinghan's aura. The chaotic heavens had long been controlled by the sages, so Yi Qinghan was exposed when he left the chaotic heavens and entered the secondary universe. This place belonged to the Purple Sun subrealm, and this secondary universe belonged to the territory of Saintess Qian Yixue. Qian Yixue received the news not long after returning to the Qian Yi sacred mountain. Yi Qinghan broke into my Qian Yi sacred mountain. Qian Yixue muttered to herself in shock and became incomparably cautious. Yi Qinghan was not alone, and his spiritual pet had already stepped into the sage realm. If the two of them joined forces, they would definitely be stronger than her. Chapter 30:19. In the Qianyi sacred mountain, Qian Yixue took a deep breath. She did not know what Yi Qinghan wanted to do, but she could not allow him to enter her territory, even if it was just to pass through. If he did, he would offend the other 8 sages. If he did not pass through and had other plans, then it would be even more unacceptable. Seal all the important paths and the void. Stop him for me. Qian Yixue said firmly. Whoosh! Whoosh! All the experts of the sacred land were mobilized, rushing through the air and sealing off the sky and the important paths in the Qianyi secondary universe. Qian Yixue personally went out, a long white whip like a dragon's bone. There were sharp swords around the bone whip, which could be separated and used separately. It could instantly kill countless armies, and no one below the sage level could stop her. The experts and army of the Qianyi sacred land had sealed off the sky and the path in advance. The immemorial war spear exuded a fierce murderous intent, and a huge crossbow was aimed forward. This crossbow was designed to stop progenitors, and its lethality was extremely terrifying. It could instantly create an artificial black hole. Qian Yixue used the chaotic heavenly domain to directly search for Yi Qinghan's location, and was getting closer and closer. Right now, Yi Qinghan and Sovereign Ye's speed wasn't fast and they were separated. Qian Yishue's eyes flashed. This might be the best time to assassinate Yi Qinghan. The white bone whip in her hand shrank into a bone sword, and she moved close to him, taking the initiative to meet him. If I kill Yi Qinghan, that sovereign's energy origin will lose its backbone. If I can get it, my strength may be able to reach beyond the sage level, and become a true great sage. There will be no opponent below the sovereign level. Even if the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors of the 3rd planet recover to their peak, they will still have to avoid me. Qian Yishue's killing intent was aroused. Yi Qinghan's original body was not a sage, and it would be easy to succeed. However, if the sages took action, most of this secondary universe would likely be destroyed. We can't give him a chance to fight back. Otherwise, there will be a lot of casualties. Qian Yishue had considered everything thoroughly and pressed forward step by step. The distance between her and Yi Qinghan was about the distance between 2 main cities. She knew that if Yi Qinghan continued to advance, he would enter the largest desert in the secondary universe. It was desolate and uninhabited, so it was the best place to attack. Even if Yi Qinghan and Supreme Yi fought back, only the 2 main cities nearby would be destroyed. At this moment, Yi Qinghan did not want to cause any trouble, so he kept a low profile along the way. He only wanted to use another secondary universe to enter the secondary saint realm of the 3rd planet. Therefore, he did not release his divine sense, so he did not discover Qian Yishue and the army ahead. I wonder which sage controls this secondary universe, Yi Qinghan said as he walked. Supreme Yi stretched and said lazily, I don't care who controls it. If he dares to offend me, I'll definitely show him my strength. It's best not to offend him for now. I'm not a sage after all. Right now, our combat power can only kill 1 sage. If we kill 1 sage, there's no guarantee that the other sages won't join forces to annihilate Kuang Fu. By then, it'll be too late for regrets, Yi Qinghan said calmly. Supreme Yi pursed his lips. It was not easy for him to become a true supreme. Until now, he had not had the time to display his advantages. However, he was also afraid of being ganged up on. By then, he would probably be tortured to death by the other sages. Whoosh! The 2 sped up and directly entered the desert. Now, they were rushing in the general direction. As long as they passed through 3 secondary universes and entered the Chu Tian domain, they would be able to approach the 3rd planet. Whoosh! The 2 were neither too fast nor too slow. Now that they were entering another secondary universe, they had to maintain their peak condition for fear of being ambushed. As they gradually went deeper, Yi Qinghan felt a sense of trepidation because Qian Yishue was targeting him, not Supreme Yi. Boom. At this moment, the bone sword flew through the air and headed straight for Yi Qinghan's head. Whoosh! Just as the bone sword appeared in front of Yi Qinghan, it turned into a long whip. Dozens of sword blades appeared on both sides of the whip and attacked Yi Qinghan fiercely. Whoosh! Boom. The sage's power shattered the spot where Yi Qinghan stood. The entire desert was shaken by this attack, and even the secondary world was shaking. A huge collapsed black hole swallowed the entire desert. However, Supreme Yi and Yi Qinghan were gone. Qian Yishue put away the bone whip and shook her hand. The bone whip turned into a bone sword. She stood in the air above the desert and frowned as she looked at her masterpiece. She was a little doubtful. Even if her attack was very powerful, it was not enough to shatter Supreme Yi, who had the power of a ruler. Hiss, dong, 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 Qian Yishue's beautiful and plump body trembled slightly. Her heartbeat quickened, and she immediately dodged and left. Following that, she split the void with her blade and headed straight for the other secondary universes. In the blink of an eye, she was a distance away from a main city. Yi Qinghan held a heavy sword in his hand. The bracelet on his wrist emitted a holy white light that enhanced his strength. At this moment, he had already fused with Supreme Yi. However, this time, it was not Supreme Yi who was in charge, but himself. Sage Qian Yixue, it turns out that Song Mu and Heaven-Blessed Sage are not the only ones who know how to sneak attack. There's also a beauty like you. Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and stood on top of a main city. He looked at Qian Yixue in the distance. She could not be considered old or young. At most, she was a middle-aged woman. She was still charming and was a full young woman. Her body was plump, and she was indeed more attractive than a beauty. However, Yi Qinghan did not dare to have any thoughts. This kind of woman was like a thorny rose that could pierce the hand that plucked it at any time. No matter how powerful one was, they would not be able to escape. So fast. Qian Yixue was shocked and looked at Yi Qinghan in disbelief. Previously, Yi Qinghan had not fused with Supreme Yi's soul. How could he have dodged her sure-kill sword? Yi Qinghan sneered and snorted. If I'm not fast enough, I'll die by your sword. Boss, this woman is so vicious. Why don't we let her stand in her holy land today and let the world admire her? Supreme Yi did not take the initiative. His soul wandered out at any time and said to Yi Qinghan in a wretched manner. Yi Qinghan touched his nose with a cold expression. He did not expect Qian Yixue to sneak an attack on him. The king does not see the king, and the sage does not see the sage. You broke into my Qianni holy land for no reason. This is equivalent to declaring war. Why can't I attack? Qian Yixue was not angry. Instead, she asked firmly. Yi Qinghan looked at Supreme Yi in surprise and asked curiously, is there such a rule? Supreme Yi shrugged and replied speechlessly, how would I know if you ask me? No one told me. Yi Qinghan pursed his lips and spread his hands. He replied, Sage Qian Yixue, as you can see, we didn't know about this rule. We just wanted to borrow a path and leave. Who knew that you would be so ruthless and attack us, borrow a path? No, you must return immediately. Otherwise, you will declare war on my holy land for no reason. Humph. Qian Yixue rejected Yi Qinghan's request without hesitation. Fuck. Yi Qinghan and Supreme Yi cursed at the same time. This woman was simply asking for a beating. Chapter 30-20. The word fuck was enough to express the dissatisfaction in their hearts. Little girl, do you think I'm a sick cat if I don't show my might? I'll go wherever I want. I'm giving you face by letting you pass. It's best that you do so today. If you don't blame me for stepping over your head, Yi Qinghan said coldly. His life had been messed up by the 9 sages, and everyone in Insane Manor was in danger. Yi Qinghan couldn't help but feel angry. Boom! Yi Qinghan and Sovereign Yi merged again. Their auras soared to the sky as they held a flaming sage sword and looked coldly at Qian Yixue in the distance. Qian Yixue had wanted to assassinate Yi Qinghan, or at least stop Yi Qinghan from passing through. However, it seemed that if she dared to stop Yi Qinghan today, the entire sacred land would be razed to the ground by Yi Qinghan. You said that the other sacred lands bullied Insane Manor without any evidence or reason. What's the difference between what you're doing now? Qian Yixue rebuked angrily. Yi Qinghan snorted. When Lu Zong brought people into Insane Manor, I didn't stop them, nor did I attack them. If they hadn't committed a crime and tried to kill the higher-ups of Insane Manor, would they have been captured? Now, I'm just passing through in a low-key manner, yet you don't allow it. If you don't allow it, then you don't allow it. Why do you have to assassinate me? Now, you're telling me that I'm attacking the Qianni sacred land rudely. Isn't that laughable? This is my territory. I have the right to do so. Just like Insane Manor, if I were to enter your territory quietly, wouldn't you be on guard? Qian Yixue didn't let go of this point. She refused to let him pass. Crack crack crack, Yi Qinghan cracked his neck, killing intent flashing in his eyes. He said coldly, "Since you don't care about the survival of the sacred land, why should I care? If you don't let me pass, I'll destroy the Qianni sacred land today." Roar! Boom! Yi Qinghan drew his sword and sprinted away. His speed was even faster than before and there was no trace of him at all. All laws of order were automatically giving way. The local secondary universe of the Qianni Holy Land would definitely be annihilated if a fight broke out between the sages and the saints in the secondary universe. Qian Yixue was shocked. She could clearly feel that Yi Qinghan's combat power was 40% stronger than the sage who attacked Fang Yu. "Wait. I can let you pass." Qian Yixue's expression immediately turned ugly. It was not that she did not dare to fight alone, but this was not a place for sages to fight. Yi Qinghan snorted. He flung the sword in his hand and said coldly, "You really deserve a beating. Did you anger your man to death?" Qian Yixue was so angry that she gritted her teeth and shook the bone whip in her hand. If this was not the Qianni sacred ground, she would definitely fight Yi Qinghan to the death. "You can leave. I will definitely take revenge for what happened today," Qian Yixue replied coldly. The bone whip shook, and the void collapsed. The sages will condensed into two large words. "Let him pass." Qian Yixue was unwilling to give up. She stared at Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan looked at Qian Yixue's angry expression and smiled faintly. "Oh, the sage is angry. Why don't you come with me to the secondary saint realm and we can compete?" The secondary saint realm was not suitable for fighting, but it did not mean that it was not suitable for sages to fight. Once there, it would all depend on one's understanding of secret techniques. One could only use 30% of one's strength. Although it was only 30%, it was the essence of a sage. It was absolutely magnificent. "Humph, I'll wait for you in the secondary saint realm." Whoosh! Whoosh! The void shattered. Qian Yixue left where she was and rushed toward the southern secondary universe. Yi Qinghan and Supremacy Yi joined forces. With the support of Little White Cloud, they caught up to her in an instant. They stepped over dozens of main cities with a wave of their hands and crossed a secondary universe in a few breaths. The sage's strength and speed were extraordinary. The two of them rushed all the way and returned to the Seeking Heaven domain after a few hours. They shuttled back and forth in the Seeking Heaven domain's original land of chaos. They chased after each other and their speed was exaggerated. They chased after lightning and shattered cracks. They did not even dodge the black holes. It was clear how angry Qian Yixue was. Yi Qinghan followed Qian Yixue at a moderate speed. He deliberately slowed down because he really wanted to teach this woman a lesson today. Even if he could not kill her, he could beat her up. Qian Yixue did not know that Yi Qinghan was deliberately letting her go at that moment. She thought that his and Supremacy Ye's combined speed was only so. Yes, his and Supremacy Ye's combined speed could not be much faster. However, the support of Little White Cloud was not simple. He could only use half of his speed now. Once he used his full strength, he could kill Qian Yixue's speed in an instant. Whoosh! Boom! The universe collapsed. The two of them were like black holes. The laws of order in the original universe did not exist. Now, it was occupied by the sage's laws and principles, and there was law and principle of order. The original universe was too vast. Even a sage needed several months to reach the secondary saint realm. Huff, 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 Qian Yixue panted. The bone sword in her hand was even colder. She stared coldly at Yi Qinghan. "Today, I want to learn from the combination of Manor Lord Yi and the ruler's energy. If I lose, you can punish me. If you lose, give me the ruler's energy and I will spare your life. Do you dare to agree?" Qian Yixue said coldly. Her goal was still the ruler's energy. I won't give up until I reach the Yellow River. If you win today, I will serve you as my master. I will give you the ruler's energy with both hands. If you lose, do you dare to swear on your sage merits to serve me as your master? Yi Qinghan asked with a cold smile. This bet was huge. It was equivalent to gambling with one's life. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Qian Yixue took a deep breath. Looking at Yi Qinghan's resolute gaze, her hands and feet trembled. She was clearly angered by Yi Qinghan. Qian Yixue hesitated for a moment. She didn't know Yi Qinghan well and didn't know what trump cards he had. If he lost, it would be the biggest joke in the world if a sage took a junior as his master. I see that you're not bad looking, or I wouldn't be willing to make such a bet. The other sages are worthless in my eyes. They're not worth this price. If you don't agree, don't regret it. Yi Qinghan grinned provocatively. The sage merits in Qian Yixue's body were about to shatter the secondary Saint Realm's laws of order. Fine. I agree to your conditions. I will swear on my sage merits. If I lose, I will serve Yi Qinghan as my master. Otherwise, my merits will dissipate. The ruler's energy will leave my bloodline and I will become a progenitor again. If you lose and refuse to serve me as your master, I will do everything in my power to raise the insane immortal kingdom to the ground, Qian Yixue said without hesitation. Yi Qinghan smiled silently. His aura leaked out and completely merged with Sovereign Ye's. However, he was still in control. At this moment, Yi Qinghan discovered that little white cloud could actually suppress the laws of order here, allowing him to use about 60% of his strength while little white cloud could only use 30% of his strength. In this way, there was no comparison. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan waved his hand and Sovereign Yi separated from him. It's too unfair to fight you like this. I don't need to use my ruler's energy to fight you. Yi Qinghan said proudly. Chapter 30-21. Yi Qinghan let go of Sovereign Yi and even threw his sword to him, but the white bracelet on his wrist was very conspicuous. No one knew who built this secondary Saint Realm, but its power was very obvious. A sage could only use 30% of his power here, but the little white cloud could allow Yi Qinghan to use his peak power and could even support him. This was different. Qian Yixue's bone sword shook and turned into a bone whip. The sharp sword edge around the bone whip emitted the power of a sage. 30% of her power was enough to kill many ancestors. Even an expert like Feng Xian, who had grasped 50% of the sage's power, could only be defeated when facing 30% of a true sage's power. Yi Qinghan, today I'll let you see what a true sage is. With 30% of my power, it'll be good if you can withstand 3 moves. Boom! Buzzed out the bone whip in Qian Yixue's hand moved, and the wind whistled. The space of the secondary Saint Realm did not move at all, and the sword light filled the surroundings. Whoosh! The stable void was cut open by the sword edge on the bone whip, but it instantly reassembled. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and directly left the place. His speed was unimaginably fast, and even the bone whip speed could not catch up to his pace. Whoosh! Qian Yixue's figure moved, and the essence of the whip was revealed to the extreme. It danced around Yi Qinghan, but it brushed past him every time. Slap! Yi Qinghan was bare-handed. He seized the power of the bone whip's afterimage and slapped Qian Yixue's waist. However, the bone whip's sword edge directly tore the clothes on his arm, and almost injured his flesh. Fortunately, he retreated quickly enough. Yi Qinghan used a lot of power in this slap. He wanted to take the opportunity to hit Qian Yixue, but unfortunately, she intercepted it in time, causing Yi Qinghan's slap to feel like he was caressing her waist. Although Qian Yixue was very old, her cultivation was strong enough. At this moment, her appearance was like a young woman in her 30s. She had never touched a man since her husband died. She did not expect to be touched by Yi Qinghan today. "You're courting death," boom. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Roar. The blade on the bone whip spun at high speed, constantly cutting off Yi Qinghan's escape and attack routes. Yi Qinghan didn't dare to touch the swords on the bone whips. He could only keep dodging. The swords kept slashing at his throat. If he wasn't so fast, he probably wouldn't have been able to dodge 3 attacks. Thud thud thud. Hada Yi Qinghan shifted around, his hands forming claws that could almost tear the void apart. Ancestral might mixed with the power of the sage and sage, he was so powerful that not even a second-level saint could suppress his aura. Boom! Bang! The powerful force charged into the secondary saint realm, and the space began to fluctuate. It was a ghastly sight, and there were afterimages everywhere. Supreme Yi was lying on a stone slab with his legs crossed. He leaned against the stone with a sinister smile on his face. How boring. If I had made a move, this little girl would have lost long ago, Supreme Martial Artist Yi said arrogantly. Supreme Martial Artist Yi saw that Yi Qinghan was still able to move with ease, but he couldn't attack Qian Yishue's body because the whip technique had completely protected him. Yi Qinghan was also in a passive position. His speed was faster than Qian Yishue's, but he couldn't fight her head-on. Sword, Yi Qinghan's body retreated, and his large hand grabbed behind him. At this moment, Sovereign Yi waved his hand and pulled out the flaming sage sword that was stabbed into the stone slab, and directly threw it to Yi Qinghan. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Roar. Yi Qinghan's speed was extremely fast. The tip of his sword split into dozens of swords, causing sparks to fly from the bone whip. He was actually on par with Qian Yishue. Qian Yishue attacked for a long time, but she couldn't break through. A large part of her battle robe was torn by the sword, and her beauty gradually appeared. Qian Yishue was flustered and exasperated. She swung her whip around and directly locked Yi Qinghan's surroundings. The sword light was like a rainbow, instantly cutting through Yi Qinghan's battle robe. However, when the bone whip's blade cut through the white line formed by the little white clouds, it actually didn't cut through it. Yi Qinghan was immediately overjoyed. He found an opportunity to block the bone whip with his wrist and punch out. Bang! Boom! Yi Qinghan's fist landed on Qian Yishue's waist, but his left hand blocked the bone whip. The blade on the bone whip was actually blocked by the bracelet, and it couldn't pierce through at all. Ah, pooh! Qian Yishue's waist was almost broken. Her body twisted and flew to the right. The bone whip was dragged along as it moved quickly. The tail of the whip swung backward and pierced through Yi Qinghan's back. The blade cut through Supreme Martial Artist Yi Qinghan's body, instantly turning it into a bloody mess. Humph! Yi Qinghan let out a muffled groan and staggered, almost falling over. Thud, 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 Qian Yishue retreated a few hundred steps before she could regain her footing. Her face was pale, and the bone whip in her hand was stained with blood. It even had a trace of Yi Qinghan's flesh. However, her injuries weren't limited to that. Several of her ribs on the left side of her waist had been broken by Yi Qinghan's punch. She almost suffocated. Yi Qinghan sucked in a breath of cold air and touched his back. His flesh had become much weaker. Although this place couldn't unleash the power of a sage, the sage's laws of order still existed. Once injured, it would be difficult to recover. Humph! Yi Qinghan snorted coldly, gritting his teeth as he broke out in a cold sweat. Qian Yishue stared at the bracelet on Yi Qinghan's wrist. It was just a white cloud, and yet it could block the attack of a sage weapon. Although this place suppressed most of her power, she couldn't find such a substance in all the secondary universes and primal universes. If she could find it, she would have dominated the entire secondary universe. What's that in your hand? Qian Yishue asked in a deep voice. Yi Qinghan waved his wrist. He was also staring at the little white cloud on his left wrist. There wasn't even a mark on it. The little white cloud's defensive power was exaggerated. He had never seen such a material before. I don't know what this thing is, but now that I know that its defensive power is so strong, your attack won't have much effect on me. At least in the secondary saint realm, it won't be a threat to me. Yi Qinghan moved his wrist, and the little white cloud transformed into a real cloud. It clung tightly to his chest and arms. This white cloud was as light as a feather, unlike heavy armor that couldn't fit. This little white cloud would only increase his combat power. Qian Yixue, you don't have a chance. Admit defeat. Yi Qinghan stepped towards Qian Yixue and said coldly. Qian Yixue frowned as she looked at Yi Qinghan's smug face. She kept retreating, wanting to leave the secondary saint realm. As long as she left the secondary saint realm, she would be able to unleash her peak combat power. At that time, the little white cloud might not be able to defend against her attacks. Hua! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed, and he appeared behind Qian Yixue. Qian Yixue immediately turned to the left and retreated, but she couldn't escape from Yi Qinghan's control. Hua! Yi Qinghan flipped his hand, and the little white cloud left his hand and wrapped around the bone whip. The two swords on the bone whip couldn't attack anymore. Yi Qinghan took advantage of the momentum to rush towards Qian Yixue. He punched her wrist, and the bone whip left her hand. Qian Yixue's combat power dropped significantly once the bone whip left her hand. Chapter 30-22. Boom! The bone whip fell, but the divine light continued to flash. Yi Qinghan was holding onto the little white cloud by a thread, and it returned to Yi Qinghan's hand. Do you still want to hold on? The bone whip is no threat to me, at least not here. Even if you fight to the death, the result will be the same. Yi Qinghan stepped not too far away from Qian Yixue and spoke calmly. Qian Yixue took a deep breath and looked at the bone whip in the distance. She knew that if she fought again, the result would be the same. This place was not suitable for her to fight, and she had no idea what the little white cloud was. This godly item's sudden appearance had disrupted her plans. Qian Yixue stared at the little white cloud wrapped around Yi Qinghan's right wrist and said unwillingly, I admit defeat, but you must tell me where this thing came from. Yi Qinghan shrugged and replied calmly, I found this thing in the primal universe's primordial chaos. At the time, it was entangled by a primordial black hole. I discovered it by accident and rescued it. I didn't expect it to have its own consciousness, but it cannot communicate with me, so I don't know what it is. Perhaps it is a second ball of ruler's energy, or perhaps it is something else. You don't know. Qian Yixue looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. She did not expect to lose to an unknown thing. Yi Qinghan nodded seriously and said calmly, I thought the sage would know about it. It seems that I overestimated you and underestimated the primal universe. Phew, Qian Yixue exhaled. She was a sage, and an old one at that, so she knew the difference between a sage and a legendary ruler. It was the difference between heaven and earth. It was incomparable and immeasurable. A ruler ruled over everything. Once he appeared, everything in the world would pale in comparison. He was the master of the primal universe, and all laws of order would have to listen to him. A ruler could create new laws of order, so a second ruler could not be born. There were too many unknown things between a ruler and a sage. There were many things that the sage did not know about. Now, a strange substance had appeared. Qian Yixue took a deep breath and said in a low voice, I admit defeat. Admitting defeat meant becoming a slave. A sage becoming a slave. This was the first time in all of history. Yi Qinghan smiled and raised the chin of the first female sage in all of history. He said calmly, Qian Yixue, I did not intend to be enemies with you. I purely wanted to break through to the ruler realm and revive some people who should not die. However, you took the initiative to oppose me, so don't blame me for not being courteous. If you're willing to bet, then you must accept your loss. If you want to be a slave, then so be it. Yi Qinghan smiled faintly and said, "This is not the attitude of a slave." Qian Yixue, she was unwilling to say anything. Yi Qinghan looked at Qian Yixue's expression and thought for a moment. He put down his finger and said, "Sage Qian Yi, you are a sage and a senior. I know that I am not qualified to be your master, and I have never thought of becoming your master. I just want to be friends with you. At least, we are not enemies. If there is a day when other sages attack me, if you do not help me, at least do not attack me. So, let's pretend that today's bet never happened. How about it?" Qian Yixue looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. She did not expect him to give up a slave like her. She was a sage and a peerlessly beautiful woman. Wasn't this what all men wanted? "Yes, your strength is a great help, and you can help me at critical moments. Your beauty is also unparalleled in the world, and any man would be moved by it. The feeling of being conquered is unparalleled. However, you're a sage, and you shouldn't be humiliated, nor should you be a slave. If I were to do that, I'd really be cutting off my path to becoming a sage. I'm not as short-sighted as others. I'm just me, and my goal isn't just to become a sage, nor is it to be above a sage, but to dominate everything. As such, my state of mind is definitely not what you think it is," Yi Qinghan said plainly. Qian Yixue looked at Yi Qinghan's calm face and her Dao heart was in a mess. How many years had it been since she had interacted with someone of the same generation? She seemed to have forgotten that she had always lived in her own world and did not communicate with outsiders. However, when she heard Yi Qinghan's words, she realized that there really was a problem with her state of mind. "Allow me to say something sincerely. You are not qualified to be called sages. If you have time, take a look at the sages of the third planet. They are the real sages. During the battle of the sages in the primordial era, there were many sages in the secondary universe, right? According to my understanding of the third planet, there are not many sages. Counting the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, other than these 8 and 2 or 3 legendary figures, they only have 10 sages. How many secondary universes are there? There should be no less than 20 sages. Did you win? No. And you lost miserably. Why? Because you know too little about the state of mind of the sages. Yi Qinghan said quietly. Everyone says that the merit of the sages is not just for your people, but for the entire common people and the primal universe. The sages of your secondary universe are too short-sighted, terrifyingly short-sighted. Yi Qinghan slowly retreated, turned around, pulled out his sword, and picked up the bone whip before throwing it to Qian Yixue. What you should be comprehending now is not the profound meaning of the mystic techniques or the so-called sages' laws, but human nature and common people. We are all humans. No matter how strong our cultivation is, we cannot break away from human nature. When you understand the importance of human nature and common people, you can tell me that you are sages. Yi Qinghan said faintly, "Take your bone whip and leave. I hope that the next time we meet, we will not be enemies, but fellow Taoists." Qian Yixue's eyes were filled with complex emotions. No one had ever said the words Yi Qinghan had said to her all these years, and no one had dared to speak to her like that. "Thank you," Qian Yixue said solemnly. Yi Qinghan looked straight at Qian Yixue and said with a smile, "You are welcome. You were born noble, but I am like an ant. I climbed hundreds of stairs, and every step I took was firm and solid. That is why I understand the thoughts of people at every level. If you don't find it troublesome, you can give up your arrogance and climb up from the lowest level of mortals. Make every step more solid, and you will discover that life really is different from what you think it is. Of course, you can also choose to be my enemy, but I have always only given people one chance. If you cherish it, you are my friend. If you don't, you are my enemy. I don't care if I have one or two more enemies. In the short term, the other sages won't dare to make a move. 10,000 years later, even if they join forces, they won't be able to do anything to me. Yi Qinghan turned and left, leaving behind a final sentence. 9 sages. If nothing unexpected happens, I will only take 3 lives. If the 6 of you don't cherish it, I don't think any of you 9 sages will survive. The position of ruler is mine. Even if I can't do it, it will be the people of Guangfu who can reach that step. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and gradually disappeared from Qian Yishue's sight. A good deed was a path. If Yi Qinghan forcefully enslaved Qian Yishue today, she might betray him at a critical moment out of hatred. Both sides would suffer, and in the end, they would both die. Rather than not being able to control her, it was better to let her go. She might be of great use in the future. Yi Qinghan's every step was meticulous. Chapter 30-23. Yi Qinghan left the secondary saint realm and entered the secular world, arriving at the peak of the Taoist mountain. Zhang Daoling seemed to be waiting for him. He had returned from the primal universe and had not left. Yi Qinghan bowed and said respectfully, "Greetings, senior sage." Zhang Daoling's hair was white, and even his beard was white. At this moment, he had a warm expression on his face, just like his grandfather, kind and amiable. "Manor Lord Yi, you don't have to be so polite. Although you are not a sage, you have the combat power of a sage with your spirit pet. Sit down and wait for us to be peers," Zhang Daoling said with a smile. Yi Qinghan was stunned. He did not expect Zhang Daoling to know that his spirit pet, Supreme Yi, had become a supreme. Zhang Daoling looked at Yi Qinghan's surprised expression and immediately explained with a smile, "When you fought with Sage Fangyu, I was behind you. When I saw that you were in control of the situation, I did not make a move. If I had, I would have angered the sages of the secondary universe. The gains would not have made up for the losses." Yi Qinghan immediately bowed again and said in a deep voice, "Thank you for your concern, venerable master." Whoosh! Zhang Daoling got up and helped Yi Qinghan up. They walked out of the hall and looked at the beautiful mountains and rivers. The white clouds were within reach. Although this place was small, it was even more majestic. Zhang Daoling stood on the peak outside the hall and looked at the vast mist as he whispered, "There is no need to stand on ceremony. You just have to remember that sages do not rely on strength, but on merit. That is enough. Don't do anything stupid like the sages of the secondary universe." "I will remember," Yi Qinghan said respectfully. Zhang Daoling turned to look into Yi Qinghan's eyes. He had seen a lot in his life and had seen countless people. At a glance, he could tell who was worth nurturing and who was not. However, people were fickle, just like Tao ancestor star-defying. "I hope you have not forgotten your original intention." Zhang Daoling's voice was as loud as a bell, and he had the demeanor of a transcendent being. He then asked indifferently, "Since you've come back at this time, you must have something to tell me, right? If this old man can help you, I'll help you." Yi Qinghan immediately took out little white cloud and placed it in his palm. He asked, "Esteemed master, you are experienced and knowledgeable. Can you explain to me what this is?" Zhang Daoling looked at little white cloud. At first, he was calm, but then he became confused, and then he was shocked. He reached out his aged and decaying hand and stroked little white cloud. He didn't say anything for a long time. Indeed, Zhang Daoling was very knowledgeable, but he had never seen anything like the little white cloud. It wasn't sovereign energy, but on the third planet, it was able to exert a different kind of law and logos. This was unprecedented. Even if the formation here had been set up by Yuzun, he wouldn't have been able to exert much of the sage's power, but this little white cloud could. This is... Zhang Daoling mumbled to himself. He could not recognize the origin of this little white cloud. He then asked, "Headmaster Yi, where did you get this treasure? What are its specific uses?" Yi Qinghan answered truthfully, "This junior obtained it from the primal universe's most primordial land of chaos. At the time, it was entangled by the primordial black hole, and even the primordial black hole was blocked by it. However, it couldn't break free from the primordial black hole's shackles, and the black hole couldn't pull it in. It can increase my combat power by 1,000 times. Even if I fuse with the divine bird, it can increase my strength by about 30%. Its defensive power is incredible. I fought with Sage Qian Yixue in the secondary Saint Realm, and she used about 30% of her power, but she couldn't break through Little White Cloud's defense at all." Zhang Daoling was silent for a long time. This kind of thing was beyond his comprehension. "Qian Yixue lost?" Zhang Daoling asked. Yi Qinghan nodded and replied, "Although I had a bet with her, I let her go. I didn't want to completely anger the 9 sages, so, yes, you know when to advance and when to retreat. You see the big picture. You are the wisest person this old man has ever met." Zhang Daoling sighed. Qian Yixue's nature isn't bad. This matter might have inspired her. It's not a bad thing. Letting her go is beneficial to both you and her. Yi Qinghan nodded. He had naturally considered this when he let Qian Yixue go. "Is there anything else?" Zhang Daoling asked. Yi Qinghan cupped his fists and bowed again. This junior would like to ask the esteemed one to help this junior cultivate the upper echelons of Kuang Manor. If we can cultivate 1 or 2 sages, Kuang Manor won't be suppressed like this. Our sect can become a holy land. If 1 or 2 sages had sovereign energy, it would be easy to cultivate. However, if one wanted to become a sage without sovereign energy, apart from the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, no one had ever become a sage through virtue. Even Zhang Daoling himself had only become a sage after refining sovereign energy. Zhang Daoling took a deep breath and pondered for a long time before replying in a low voice, "Come with me to the Jade Court Sacred Realm first. I'm going to see Lord Yuzun and ask him about this white cloud. Also, I'm going to train a sage and see if Lord Yuzun has a better way to make someone a sage without the sovereign's energy source. The person next to you last time was tainted with the merit of an ancestor. He has the highest chance of becoming a sage and can do it without the sovereign's energy. It's just that this old man can't train him." Yi Qinghan had heard of Lord Yu's name for a long time. According to history, he was a great sage who controlled the flood. In reality, his merits were far more than just controlling the flood. Most of the legends were not true. Many of his essences were hidden away because he didn't want to disturb the hearts of the people. "I wonder if this junior can meet Lord Yu?" Yi Qinghan asked expectantly. As a person of the 3rd planet, it was the most glorious thing to be able to meet an ancestor. Yi Qinghan was no exception. Even if he became a sage, the respect in his heart would not change. Zhang Daoling hesitated. Lord Yu was in a very awkward situation now. His merits were constantly being depleted because of the formation. The only people who truly knew about his merits were the few sages of the Jade Court Sacred Realm. His merits were being depleted quickly, but the amount he could absorb was little. He couldn't make ends meet. He hadn't seen anyone for many years. This old man doesn't dare to agree. "Let me see Master Elder Jun. Come with me first." Zhang Daoling sighed. Yi Qinghan followed Zhang Daoling all the way down the mountain. Zhang Daoling was still able to use some of his power, but he was relying on a protective treasure given to him by Sage Yuzun. It was an umbrella. It was unknown how long this oiled paper umbrella had lasted. Although it was old, it allowed him to use 10% of the sage's power. Whoosh! Whoosh! Zhang Daoling's figure flashed and took Yi Qinghan to the sky. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared without a trace. 2 hours later, the two appeared in the secondary Saint Realm. At the end of the secondary Saint Realm was a node that led to the Jade Court Sacred Realm. However, other than the sages of the third planet, there was no one else. There was actually another Jade Court Sacred Realm behind the secondary Saint Realm. Chapter 30-24. The Jade Court Sacred Realm was as beautiful as a fairyland. Immortal chi lingered in the air, and the immortal pond was filled with lotus flowers. The Jade Court Sacred Realm definitely didn't only have sages. There were also some talented people from the third planet who had the legendary immortal root, which was the foundation for cultivation. They were chosen by the sages for cultivation, and also to take care of the sages who were past their prime. Greetings, Heavenly Master, greetings, Heavenly Master. A few young men and women passed by and bowed. Zhang Daoling didn't put on any airs, unlike the sages of other secondary holy lands. Everyone had to kneel when they saw him, and he only smiled. These children are the seedlings I selected from the third planet. Unfortunately, with the passage of time, many of the people with cultivation talent from the third planet have disappeared. Now, it's already good enough to find a few young people to take care of their daily lives. Zhang Daoling sighed. Yi Qinghan followed behind and watched. These young people's talents were indeed very ordinary, but this was because they were suppressed by the laws of order. If the 9 cauldrons were removed, perhaps it would be a different scene. Yi Qinghan knew a lot about the legends of the third planet, but he didn't know if those mythical people existed. Yi Qinghan asked like a curious child, Venerable One, does the legendary Hou-Yi shooting down the sun really exist? Zhang Daoling's face darkened, and he nodded and replied, it does, but he didn't shoot down the sun, but a sage. However, he has already fallen. Yi Qinghan was shocked. He didn't expect such a legendary existence to have fallen. Tathagata. The Jade Emperor. Do they all exist? Yi Qinghan asked again. Zhang Daoling smiled and shook his head, saying lightly, they don't exist. They are all fabricated. Most myths can't be trusted, but there are some that do exist. Oh, Yi Qinghan was slightly disappointed. Those mythical figures were heroes in many people's hearts, but unfortunately, they were all fabricated. After a while, they passed through a pond and arrived at a bamboo pavilion. Zhang Daoling said, Abode Lord Yi, I'm going to see Master Lao Jun. Whether or not I can meet Venerable Yu depends on luck. Yuzun wasn't putting on airs, it was just that his current state made it impossible for him to meet people at any time. Yi Qinghan was looking forward to meeting virtuous paragon Yuzun, but he didn't force the issue and nodded seriously. Tap tap tap, Zhang Daoling slowly left. Although this sacred realm was quite big, the buildings were all clustered together. The rest of the place was filled with immortal herbs and divine flowers. Yi Qinghan sat on a chair and looked around. Supreme martial artist Yi also poked his head out and looked around, drooling. This place is so strange. I feel that, you don't stand outside the 5 elements here. It seems that you are still within the 5 elements, Supreme Yi said doubtfully. Yi Qinghan nodded. He had also sensed that something was amiss, but this was where all the sages of the original universe resided. Even if something was amiss, it was not surprising. Little white cloud continued to coil around his right arm without much reaction. At this time, Zhang Daoling arrived at a palace with an even older man inside. It was the elderly lord. He was fanning himself with a palm leaf fan and seemed to be on the verge of death. Daoling, why did you bring Yi Qinghan to the Jade Court Sacred Realm? The elderly lord asked in a dignified manner. Zhang Daoling immediately bowed and answered, Master Elderly Lord, Yi Qinghan brought an unknown item that I have never seen before. It looks like a white cloud, but its defensive power is ridiculous. Even a sage's weapon can't cut through it. It can also increase a sage's battle prowess. It has consciousness but no soul, so we can't communicate. That's why I brought him here. Additionally, He wants me to train him in Insane Mansion and meet virtuous Paragon Yuzun. The elderly lord raised his brows. He had no objection to Yi Qinghan asking Zhang Daoling to train Insane Mansion. However, he had never heard of Little White Cloud before. As for meeting virtuous Paragon Yuzun, this was out of his control. Daoling, you know about virtuous Paragon Yuzun's situation. Did you agree? The elderly lord asked. Zhang Daoling immediately shook his head. I know about virtuous Paragon Yuzun's situation, so I didn't agree. I only told him to try his luck. That, White Cloud. I don't know what it is. As for meeting virtuous Paragon Yuzun, I'll go take a look first. If he can meet him, there is no harm in letting him meet a real virtuous paragon. The elderly lord slowly stood up with a serious expression. What was a real virtuous paragon? Of course, it was someone who didn't rely on the lord's power. Instead, they relied on merit to reach the position of a virtuous paragon. Even if a virtuous paragon's body died, their soul would accompany their merit and remain in this world forever. I think so as well. Abode Lord Ye's state of mind is still lacking and he doesn't understand the virtue of a virtuous paragon. Letting him meet virtuous Paragon Yuzun might be very beneficial for his future. Zhang Daoling lowered his voice. Whoosh! The elderly lord immediately left and disappeared from the main hall in the blink of an eye. At the back of the Jade Court Sacred Realm was a picturesque scene with majestic scenery. However, there was a very ordinary bamboo courtyard with a lake outside. A bamboo bridge extended to the center of the lake. There were several boys and girls around the age of 16 outside of the house. They each had their own duties. The elderly lord wore a white robe and had the demeanor of an immortal. He walked to the edge of the bridge and two boys immediately came to greet him. Greetings, Master Elderly Lord. The two boys immediately bowed. The elderly lord nodded and asked, how is virtuous Paragon Yuzun's body? Master Elderly Lord, virtuous ancestor virtuous Paragon has been doing well recently and has often been pushed out by us. One of the boys respectfully replied. The elderly lord was ecstatic and quickly said, go in and report that the elderly lord has an urgent matter to see virtuous Paragon Yuzun. The elderly lord was much older than virtuous Paragon Yuzun but he respected this virtuous paragon. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun's merit was comparable to the heaven and earth. Yes, the boy bowed and retreated. Not long after, the boy ran back to the bridge and respectfully said, virtuous ancestor virtuous paragon invites you in. The elderly lord immediately straightened his posture and was full of respect for virtuous Paragon Yuzun. This had nothing to do with cultivation. It was only because of virtuous Paragon Yuzun's merit that even sages had to bow. The elderly lord stepped into the bamboo house and passed through the hall to enter the courtyard. There were several pear trees in the courtyard that were blooming like snowflakes. An old man with white hair draped over his shoulders was sitting under the trees. He was a hero past his prime and time didn't spare anyone. If it wasn't for his merit protecting him, he would have already died. His majestic back was filled with the aura of a father. It was majestic and heavy like a mountain, giving people a sense of security. Even if the sky collapsed, he would still be able to withstand it. Yes, the feeling of a father. An incomparable aura. His merit transcended everything. Even so, some people didn't understand him, such as the sages of the secondary universe. This was virtuous Paragon Yuzun. He reached out and caressed the snow-white pear tree as if he was caressing a baby. The back of his old hand was full of wrinkles and cracks. Elderly Lord, long time no see. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun's hoarse voice was powerful and full of benevolence and vicissitudes. The elderly lord's face was solemn. He sighed and replied, I don't dare to disturb virtuous Paragon Yuzun's rest. I've already done what I can in the mortal world. There's no need to trouble you. Whoosh, virtuous Paragon Yuzun slightly turned his wheelchair. His appearance was indescribable. Chapter 30-25. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun's face was full of wrinkles and had lost his original appearance. The dignified Paragon Yuzun was an existence above the sage realm, yet he had aged to this extent. Ordinary people wouldn't have thought of this. The elderly lord hadn't seen Virtuous Paragon Yuzun in a long time. Seeing Yuzun at this moment, he was stunned. He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Yuzun has aged a lot. It doesn't matter. I've already come this far. What's the harm in aging a bit?" Virtuous Paragon Yuzun smiled. It seemed that even smiling was a bit difficult for him. The elderly lord sighed. The reason Yuzun was so old was because he had used his merits to set up the 9 cauldrons array. He had sealed many laws between the primary and secondary universes and cut off the cultivation path of the 3rd planet. He was using his life to buy time for the 3rd planet. "Yuzun, if you really can't do it, just remove the array. Instead of wasting your life here, why don't you do it?" "I don't believe those people will dare to mess around," the elderly lord suggested. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun shook his head and smiled. "Forget it, I've already seen through it. Although the people of the 3rd planet can't cultivate, at least they can continue their inheritance. Once the array is removed, no one knows what will happen. It's just my life in exchange for the continuation of the entire universe. It's worth it." The elderly lord couldn't change Yuzun's insistence. He could only sigh. "Tell me, why are you looking for me today?" Virtuous Paragon Yuzun changed the topic and asked the elderly lord. Only then did the elderly lord remember that Yi Qing Han was still waiting for him. He immediately said, "A junior sent out by the 3rd planet has grown up. Although he hasn't reached the sage rank, he obtained the origin of the ruler's energy and cultivated it into a human form. Although he doesn't have much combat power, when combined, he has already surpassed the power of an ordinary pinnacle sage of a secondary universe. His talent, aptitude, and temperament are all very good. He also obtained something similar to a white cloud in the origin of the primal universe. I've never seen it before, but it can be used to defend and enhance combat power. It's very unique." "What's his name?" Virtuous Paragon Yuzun seemed very pleased and nodded. "His name is Yi Qing Han." The elderly lord immediately replied. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun's fingertips trembled slightly. He thought for a moment and nodded. "Bring him here." At this moment, Yi Qing Han was waiting in silence. He was very anxious because he wanted to meet one of the 3 kings and 5 emperors. Virtuous Paragon Yu was a historical character with an unconditional faith. He was an ancestor. At this time, Zhang Daoling walked over and saw Yi Qing Han pacing back and forth. He smiled and said, "Prefecture Lord Yi, this matter cannot be rushed. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun's situation is too special. Even Master Lao Jun rarely sees him, and the same goes for other virtuous paragons. So even if you don't see him today, don't have any other ideas." Virtuous Paragon Yuzun. Yi Qing Han could see that Zhang Daoling seemed to have some unspeakable troubles. Perhaps Virtuous Paragon Yuzun's situation was not optimistic, so he generally did not want to reveal it to outsiders to prevent other sages from finding out and taking advantage of the situation. "It's fine. Whether or not I can meet him won't affect my respect and understanding of him," Yi Qing Han replied with certainty. In other people's eyes, Virtuous Paragon Yuzun did not even meet him because he was putting on airs. However, in Yi Qing Han's eyes, since Virtuous Paragon Yuzun was respected by even sages, his character was very obvious. But soon, Lao Jun appeared outside the bamboo pavilion. Looking at Yi Qing Han's vigorous face and clear eyes, he nodded with satisfaction. "Let me introduce you. This is Master Lao Jun." Zhang Daoling gestured with his hand. Yi Qing Han naturally knew of Lao Jun. According to legend, he was a top alchemist, but he did not know whether it was true or not. Senior Lao Jun, I've long heard of your great name. Yi Qinghan bowed repeatedly. The curiosity in his heart could not help but surge. He then raised his head and smiled, Senior, I heard that you are an expert alchemist. Is that true? Your alchemy furnace refined the great sage equal to heaven, Sun Wukong. Is that true? Black lines appeared on Lao Juan's forehead. He snorted and said, You stinking brat, what nonsense are you talking about? In any case, you are at the limit of the ancestor realm and have touched the threshold of the sage realm. How can you be so foolish and listen to legends? Yi Qinghan rubbed the back of his head and smiled awkwardly, these myths and legends are often true. I admire your deeds very much. Then you must know how to refine pills, right? Are there any pills suitable for me? Lao Jun was already subdued by Yi Qinghan's wretched expression. Whoosh! At this moment, Supreme Yi ran out. That wretched expression was much stronger than Yi Qinghan's. So it's Senior Lao Jun. Do you have any pills suitable for me? If you do, give me 100 or 80 pills. Supreme Yi reached out and asked. Get lost. Lao Jun was so angry that he laughed. He smiled bitterly and gestured with his hand. Virtuous Yuzun wants to see you. Hurry over. Virtuous Yuzun. Is that the person who put me in the cauldron? Supreme Yi asked curiously. Zhang Daoling was afraid that Supreme Yi and Yi Qinghan's ignorance would anger Lao Jun again. He hurriedly said, Yes, yes. Hurry up and follow Master Lao Jun. When you see Virtuous Yuzun, you are not allowed to be so rude. Yi Qinghan smiled. Lao Jun was a legendary figure and had little to do with him. However, Yuzun was different. No matter how reckless he would not dare to treat Virtuous Yuzun so impudently. Daoling, come with me too. It's good to see Virtuous Yuzun together and listen to him, Lao Jun said calmly. Zhang Daoling was immediately overjoyed. Usually, he did not have many opportunities to see Virtuous Yuzun. The group of 4 left the bamboo pavilion together and continuously shuttled across the bamboo bridge. The mist was vast and the spiritual energy was oppressive. About an hour later, the 4 of them arrived at the side of the lake. They walked on the waves and arrived at the bamboo bridge. When the 4 of them stepped outside the courtyard, the child had already pushed open the door and gestured for the 4 of them to enter. Yi Qinghan was excited and his heart was beating non-stop. Dong, 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 whoosh, 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 Yi Qinghan breathed out and rubbed his chest with his big hand. He expectantly stepped into the room and went through the hall to the courtyard. Seeing Virtuous Paragon Yuzun's old face, he felt a wave of sadness. This feeling was similar to seeing his father's white hair. Even though his flame of life had been burned out, at this moment, even Supremacy Yi was no longer wretched. He stood behind Yi Qinghan with a serious expression while staring at Virtuous Paragon Yuzun. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan respectfully kneeled and kowtowed 3 times before respectfully saying, Yi Qinghan greets ancestor. Ha ha ha, Yuzun smiled with a benevolent expression without any majesty. He slightly reached out and the kneeling Yi Qinghan couldn't help but stand up. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun smiled and said, Good child, I have given away many children over the years. Unfortunately, most of them don't even recognize their ancestors. You still recognize them, this old man is already very happy. Yi Qinghan looked up at Virtuous Paragon Yuzun's hand and face. He now understood why the Lao Jun didn't bother Virtuous Paragon Yuzun. His life force didn't have much left, so the sadness in his heart became even stronger. Chapter 30-26. It was quite sad for a virtuous paragon to reach this level. Yuzun shouldn't have lived like this. He was a virtuous paragon. In the entire universe, including the secondary universe, who could be his match? He could call the wind and rain and change countless laws and laws. However, in order to ensure the survival of the original universe, he didn't want the third planet to be destroyed. He used the formation to guard it for countless years, tirelessly. Yuzun was touched because Yi Qinghan still recognized him as an ancestor. This made Yi Qinghan even sadder. Was someone who didn't even recognize an ancestor still human? Whoosh! Yi Qinghan slightly squatted down, not wanting Yuzun to look up and talk to him. Yi Qinghan respectfully said, "Ancestor is too polite. Everyone in the third planet knows about Yuzun's merits. Qinghan's foundation is also in the dragon-seeking country, so how could I not recognize ancestor?" Yuzun gestured for Yi Qinghan to come over. Yi Qinghan didn't hesitate to squat in front of Yuzun's wheelchair without any disrespect. Yuzun reached out and stroked Yi Qinghan's black hair as gently as a father caressing his child. Yi Qinghan, who hadn't been touched for many years, wanted to cry. A child wants to be raised, but his parents don't. A tree wants to be quiet, but the wind doesn't stop. Yi Qinghan really wanted Yuzun to enjoy his old age and not use his merits and life to exchange for the continuation of the third planet and the original universe. Yuzun whispered, 10 tribulations and 10 lifetimes, it must be very hard, right? Yi Qinghan suddenly felt that the 10 tribulations and 10 lifetimes were worth it. Because of this sentence, he had no regrets. Yi Qinghan firmly shook his head and said, "It's not hard at all. This is not even 1/10,000th of the torture you went through." Yuzun's murky eyes stared at the sky. The blue sky was clear and white clouds floated in the air. His aged hand stroked Yi Qinghan's hair. The world was peaceful. Even if it's just 1 in 10,000, it's still very difficult. Yuzun understood what he was going through. It was torture day after day, year after year. There was nothing more painful than watching his own merit and life dissipate bit by bit. Just being able to see the peace of the third planet was enough for him. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun softly said, "The more we give, the less suffering the common people will suffer. Children, persevere and show me hope. The saints of the secondary universes are too stubborn and need absolute power to suppress them. I'm old and can't do that. The rest will depend on you young people." Yi Qinghan nodded resolutely. Although saving the world wasn't his goal, if he wanted to revive so many people, he had to reach the level of a ruler. Different paths led to the same goal. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun looked at Yi Qinghan's humble attitude and knew that this was the person he had chosen in his heart. This was someone worth trusting. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun softly said, "Child, let me see your little white cloud. Maybe I can help you solve your doubts." Yi Qinghan didn't hesitate at all. He could not trust anyone, but he trusted this virtuous paragon unconditionally. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan took out the little white cloud. At this moment, it was only a clump. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun reached out to take the little white cloud. It didn't reject him and instead happily wrapped around his old arm. It kept rubbing against him like a puppy rubbing against its master. This should be the deepest form of recognition. Even Yi Qinghan didn't receive this treatment despite him saving its life. It was the aura of Virtuous Paragon Yuzun that made the little white cloud recognize him. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun held the little white cloud with both hands and softly sighed. He whispered, "Long time no see, I didn't expect you to still be alive." This sentence shocked the elderly lord, Yi Qinghan, Zhang Daoling, and the divine bird. They didn't expect Virtuous Paragon Yuzun to have seen this little white cloud. The elderly lord asked in surprise, "Virtuous Paragon, what is this thing?" Virtuous Paragon Yuzun smiled and stroked the little white cloud in his palm. His eyes flashed with a complicated emotion as he murmured, "Back then, I found a large clump of sovereign energy, but it was attached to a clump of white cloud. It was this little white cloud. This little white cloud was stained with the sovereign's origin energy and can be considered a companion of the sovereign's origin energy. Perhaps its existence is to protect the origin and growth of the sovereign's energy. I was in a rush to use the 9 sovereigns' origin energies to suppress the 9 cauldrons, so I didn't pay attention to this little white cloud. However, this little guy followed me the whole way. In the end, I was running out of time, so I sped up. By the time I laid down the formation and came back to find it, it was already gone. Sure enough, this clump of energy wasn't the sovereign's energy. It was only a companion of the sovereign's origin energy. It was an existence similar to the sovereign's Tao protector. However, when it was protecting the sovereign's origin energy, it wasn't as strong as the sovereign's origin energy. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun calmly said, "It can change its shape at will. Let's call it Xing Yiyun. However, you guys should just call it Little White Cloud. Don't casually reveal its existence, or it will attract other sages to fight for it." Yi Qinghan nodded repeatedly, agreeing with the name Virtuous Paragon Yuzun gave it. Yi Qinghan said respectfully, "Thank you old ancestor for giving it a name." Virtuous Paragon Yuzun smiled and handed the Xing Yiyun to Yi Qinghan. Little White Cloud seemed a little reluctant, and it clung onto Virtuous Paragon Yuzun's wrist. Yi Qinghan didn't know if he should take it back or give it to Virtuous Paragon Yuzun. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun patted Little White Cloud and said gently, "I am old. There is no point in you following me. Follow Yi Qinghan. He needs your help. One day, the 9 clumps of sovereign's energy will become one." Yi Qinghan's group was surprised. They didn't expect Virtuous Paragon Yuzun to say this. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun lowered his voice and asked, "There are many secrets that I haven't told you. It's not that I don't trust you, it's just that your cultivation isn't enough and I'm afraid of an accident. That's why I've been keeping them in my heart. I will soon disappear. Yi Qinghan, you will be my successor. I can't teach you cultivation anymore, but you must inherit my responsibility." Yi Qinghan's heart sank. Since Honorable Yu had said such words, he must have felt that he was nearing the end of his life. "Ancestor, why don't you give up on the 9 cauldrons grand formation? Right now, the divine bird and I can stop at least 2 sages. This is enough to deter the other sages from attacking. We don't need to be afraid of them." Yi Qinghan wasn't willing to give up on the 9 cauldrons grand formation. Virtuous Paragon Yuzun's merit and life wouldn't dissipate. Yu Sovereign shook his head and sighed, "It's not as simple as you think. The 9 cauldrons are suppressing 9 virtuous paragons from a secondary universe. All of them have been heavily injured by Ho-E and have been suppressed by me for countless years. Once the formation disappears, they will recover. At that time, the 3rd planet will be finished and the entire universe will fuse back together. Outside of virtuous paragons and sages, no one will be able to survive." "What?" The elderly lord stared at Virtuous Paragon Yuzun in shock. He didn't expect the 9 paragons to survive. Chapter 30-27. His words shocked everyone. Even the elderly lord, a veteran sage, was shocked to the point of dizziness. Yuzun had never mentioned such a thing before. The reason he didn't want to talk about it was because he didn't want others to shoulder this burden. However, he felt that he was at the end of his life and wanted to give this responsibility to Yi Qinghan. However, he was worried that Yi Qinghan was too young, so he asked the elderly lord and Zhang Daoling to help. If someone else gave this responsibility to Yi Qinghan, he would refuse without hesitation. However, Yuzun was different. How could a descendant refuse a task from an ancestor? Moreover, the pain and price Yuzun had to pay for the inheritance and words of the primal universe was tens of thousands of times greater than Yi Qinghan's 10 tribulations and 10 lifetimes. Even a sage wouldn't be able to bear this. This was why he was a virtuous paragon, an unparalleled virtuous one. The 9 virtuous paragons were called so because they had virtuous merits and were loved by the people of the secondary universe. This meant that they were on the same level as the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. These people were very powerful. The sages of the secondary universe aren't enough to make us helpless, but virtuous paragons are different. They cost Ho Yi's life and Yellow Emperor's life. The gnome sovereign fell while the Sui sovereign and the others were gravely injured. Yuzun took a deep breath as if he had returned to that battle. This was a real legend coming from Yuzun's mouth. It was definitely not a fabricated myth. Most of the myths and legends of the third planet were based on falsehoods and fabricated characters. Most of these myths and legends didn't exist, but Yuzun's myths and legends all existed. They were all sages and even virtuous paragons. Sovereign Yu closed his eyes in exhaustion and whispered, "The secondary universe is much larger than the third planet and countless times larger than the primal universe. There are countless of them and they can bear a lot of merits. That's why those paragons can't be killed and can only be suppressed. I've spent my entire life using the 9 cauldrons to suppress the laws and principles of this place as well as the 9 paragons. Don't let this news out or it will cause a disaster. The sages of the secondary universe will do their best to destroy the 9 cauldrons formation. Yi Qinghan, since you have acknowledged me as your ancestor, I have no other request. I only ask that you pass on my responsibility. Otherwise, the deceased paragons will not be able to rest in peace and I will not be reconciled." Yuzun slightly opened his eyes and looked at Yi Qinghan who was squatting next to him. His eyes were full of expectation. Yi Qinghan firmly nodded. He didn't reject Yuzun's request. He had no way out. "Qinghan will remember ancestors' words," Yi Qinghan said in a low voice. At that moment, Zhang Daoling whispered something into the elderly lord's ear. The elderly lord's expression suddenly changed. The elderly lord pondered for a moment and said to Yuzun, "Yuzun, there is someone in Yi Qinghan's insane manner who has been tainted with the Yellow Emperor's merits. I heard that this child's talent is extraordinary and his Dao heart is enough to crush anyone. How should we deal with him? He is still someone from the secondary universe. I'm worried that something unexpected will happen." Yuzun was startled and shook his head. "I believe in the Yellow Emperor's merits and that there must be a reason for them to choose this person. Don't interfere with him." "Yes." Zhang Daoling and the elderly lord replied at the same time. "Manor Lord Yi wants me to go over and help nurture insane manor. Please give your orders, Lord Yuzun." Zhang Daoling bowed respectfully. Sigh, Yuzun sighed softly. If Yi Qinghan had a connection with the third planet sage, it was inevitable that the people of the secondary universe would band together to deal with Yi Qinghan. There were pros and cons. It was rare to have both. We can nurture them, but they must create their own sage techniques. This might take time, but at least the secondary universe won't band together. It will only benefit insane manner. Yuzun thought for a moment and nodded in agreement to Yi Qinghan's request. Yi Qinghan immediately replied respectfully, "Old ancestor, this is not a problem. Qinghan doesn't ask for sages everywhere. As long as a few of the 10 or so people in insane manner become sages, it will be enough. I understand their talent. As long as they are nurtured by sages, it will be easy for them to surpass their masters. As for Senior Yen Emperor, I also believe in his character and merits. Since he has been tainted with the Yellow Emperor's merits, I believe in him even more." Yuzun nodded. After a short exchange, his face darkened even more. His life was slowly coming to an end. He really didn't have much time left. Yuzun smiled and grabbed Yi Qinghan's hand. The calluses on his hand made him look like an 80-year-old farmer's, not the hands of a sage. "Is there anything else you want to ask?" Yuzun asked in a low voice. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and asked, "Old ancestor, does the ruler realm exist? Has anyone reached it before? Can he really bring the dead back to life?" Yuzun shook his head and said indifferently, "Reviving people depends on who they are reviving. If it's someone from the secondary universe, all you need to do is unblock the path of reincarnation. However, that would mean reincarnation, not true resurrection. To unblock the path of reincarnation, you don't need to be a ruler. As for the ruler realm, according to my understanding, it can be reached, but your realm is too far away. Once you are born, you can change the order and forcefully revive the dead. If you want to become a ruler, you have to gain the recognition of the original universe. Even if you become a ruler, you can't run amok, so things aren't that simple. Yu Zun calmly reminded. Yi Qinghan doubtfully asked, where is the path of reincarnation? The place where energy gathers. The primal chaos trench and the ancient torrent path are both part of the path of reincarnation. However, with the 9 cauldrons suppressing the original universe, the path of reincarnation can't be unblocked. If you want to revive some people, I'm afraid you'll need to cultivate to a level where you can suppress 9 virtuous paragons. Yu Zun seriously explained. Yi Qinghan's mouth twitched. The primal chaos trench was a ravine between the secondary universes that could devour all things. Even a sage might not be able to enter it. One would need to have the power of a virtuous paragon to open it. Even if he and the divine bird worked together, they still wouldn't be able to do it. Yu Zun patted Yi Qinghan's hand and softly reminded him, the dead are gone, there is no need to force it. If you want to become a ruler, then let nature take its course. Otherwise, all your efforts will be for naught. I was too stubborn back then, so I ended up like this. Remember this well. Yi Qinghan chuckled. If he wasn't stubborn, then he wouldn't have reached this step today. It was fine even if he couldn't become a ruler. As long as he suppressed the 9 virtuous paragons and then removed the 9 cauldrons grand formation, it would be enough to open the primal chaos trench and the ancient torrent path. As for becoming a ruler, who cares? Yu Zun didn't say anything else. This matter required one to rely on oneself. It was useless to rely on others. He glanced at Sovereign Yi. He knew the ruler's energy inside the cauldrons the best. Sovereign Yi wasn't afraid of the heavens or the earth, but he was afraid of Yi Qinghan. However, he didn't revere Yi Qinghan since they were equals. He was afraid of Yu Zun, so he kept his head down and didn't say anything. He didn't expect Yu Zun to notice him. Chapter 30-28. Supremacy Yu looked at Supremacy Yi and smiled warmly, causing Supremacy Yi to look up unwillingly. Supremacy Yu wasn't a so-called sage. There were 2 types of sages. One was those who became a sage by refining the ruler's energy. These people could forget about becoming a ruler in their lifetime, no matter how heaven-defying their cultivation was. The other type referred to people like Supremacy Yu, who had endless merit and relied on merit and cultivation to climb up step by step. If he hadn't refined the 9 cauldrons and established the world, perhaps a ruler would have already appeared. That was why Supremacy Yi didn't dare to speak carelessly in front of Supremacy Yu. It was the majesty that came from his bones that prevented sages from acting recklessly. Perhaps even Fang Yu and the other sages of the secondary universe wouldn't dare to act recklessly in front of Supremacy Yu, who couldn't attack. Supremacy Yu smiled at Supremacy Yi and said hoarsely, do you know why you can't use the power of a sage? Supremacy Yi had talent, but his combat strength had always been trash. Within the same realm, he was practically the weakest. He could only rely on his brain and mouth to anger people to death. However, he didn't want to rely on his mouth. He wanted to be like Yi Qinghan and be able to defeat someone of the same realm with one punch. Whoosh! Supremacy Yi knelt beside Supremacy Yu and said, respectfully, Supremacy Yu, please give me some advice. Yu Zun shook his head and replied, because you are the law of order, but you cannot change the law of order. You can only make the law of all things operate according to your will. However, you are only 1/9 of the ruler's energy. You cannot become a ruler. The sage is your peak. If you want to become a ruler, you must merge with humans. If you don't want to be merged with humans and still want the sage to follow your will, then you must carefully comprehend how to make the world follow your will. I can't tell you this because I don't understand it either. Once you comprehend it, you will become a ruler. You should be able to rule everything. Supremacy Yi curled his lips and said helplessly, how mysterious, but I have no clue at all. Yi Qinghan sighed softly. Not to mention Supremacy Yi, even he himself had no clue. Only a certain aristocratic family would be able to understand the words of a sage. I'll give you a word of advice. Follow the law and change it. Only by breaking and then establishing can you become a ruler. Yu Zun said in a low voice. Then, he didn't say anything else. Perhaps he was too tired. He waved his hand and said, all of you, go back. Yi Qinghan stood up respectfully and slowly retreated with Sovereign Yi. The Grand Supreme Elder and Zhang Daoling did not stay behind either. They left the courtyard house. In the courtyard, pear blossoms danced in the air. Yu Zun's hair was white, and his withered body was even dimmer. He had already entered the countdown. At this moment, he knew what to do. Humph, Yu Zun felt a stabbing pain in his heart. He couldn't help but groan. His rotten hands clenched tightly as the light around them scattered. Sigh. After persevering for so long, it's finally time to go. Yu Zun took a deep breath. His body suddenly erupted with light, but it didn't rush out of the courtyard. Pear blossoms bloomed, competing with the heavens for beauty. Outside, just as the four of them were about to step onto the bamboo bridge and leave, cries of pain suddenly came from the courtyard. Several immortal children wailed, unable to conceal the sorrow in their hearts. Yi Qinghan subconsciously turned his head to look behind him. He could not help but feel a sharp pain in his heart. It was as if someone was clutching his heart. The Grand Supreme Elder and Zhang Daoling's expressions changed drastically. They turned around and rushed back. In the courtyard, only a pure white bone was left. It was something that looked like a relic and was only the size of a thumb. It was the last thing Yu Zun left behind, and it was also the only thing left. Light enveloped the bone that was as white as jade. Merit was attached to it. It was too sudden. They were still communicating a second ago, but in the next moment, he had transformed into the Tao. Yi Qinghan and the others could not accept this reality. A few immortal children knelt beside the chair where Yu Zun had transformed into the Tao. They cried bitterly, unable to suppress the sorrow in their hearts. Yi Qinghan brought the divine bird, the Grand Supreme Elder, and Zhang Daoling back to the courtyard. They looked at the pear blossoms dancing in the sky as if it was snowing. The sorrow in their eyes was indescribable. Whoosh! The Grand Supreme Elder and Zhang Daoling bowed and sent Yu Zun off. Bang! Yi Qinghan knelt beside the chair and kowtowed 9 times to send the patriarch off. It was rare for the divine bird to be serious. It followed Yi Qinghan and knelt at the side without saying a word. Wu, the celestial child cried uncontrollably. It took him a lot of effort to stop crying, and he said to Yi Qinghan, the ancestor's last words were for you to take the virtuous bone away. Also, the news of his death must not be known to the outside world. This bone was called the merit bone. It was a supreme treasure that only those with great merit could leave behind after transforming into the Tao. Even if the Grand Supreme Elder and Zhang Daoling had transformed into the Tao, they could not leave behind such a bone. Hiss, Yi Qinghan held the merit bone with both hands and covered his face. He did not want to be a savior, but that did not mean that he did not respect them. Yu Zun was such a fearless savior. Moreover, Yu Zun was one of the ancestors of the third planet, the dragon-seeking nation. The Grand Supreme Elder sighed. This matter was bound to happen sooner or later, but he did not expect it to happen so quickly. Abode Lord Yi, take the merit bone and leave. After all, the Quan Manor still needs you. It is not suitable for you to stay here for long. The Grand Supreme Elder said in a deep voice, Daoling, leave with Abode Lord Yi one after the other. Do not let others find your tracks. As for Yu Zun's funeral, I will take care of it. Yi Qinghan took a few deep breaths. His eyes were filled with sorrow as he held the merit bone. Yi Qinghan bowed and said, "Thank you, Grand Supreme Elder. Junior will take his leave now. Go. When you have time, help me kill Dao Ancestor Star-Defying, Supreme, and Junyu." They all came from the third planet, but what they did was inhumane. Supreme and Junyu are now working for the sages of the secondary universe. Supreme has become Fang Yu's subordinate while Junyu has become Sage Shrouding Heaven's right-hand man. As for Dao Ancestor Star-Defying, you should know him since you have interacted with him before. Yi Qinghan nodded. The way these three did things was no different from a traitor. Yi Qinghan cupped his fists and said, "Junior will go and clean up the mess. Celestial Master Esteemed, please go to Crazy Manor first. Don't make it too obvious. Otherwise, they will suspect your true identity." The Grand Supreme Elder reminded him. Yi Qinghan nodded and replied, "Junior knows. Also, I have to hunt down the others. They are people I will kill along the way. No one will suspect anything." Whoosh! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan and Supremacy Yi merged and left first. Zhang Daoling followed closely behind and left the Jade Court Sacred Realm together. They entered the original universe through the secondary Saint Realm. A moment later, Zhang Daoling and Yi Qinghan separated. One went straight to the secondary universe where Sage Fang Yu was, while the other went straight to the ancient immortal secondary realm. Yi Qinghan hid the little white cloud on his wrist in his sleeve. It was his trump card that could be used at any time. It was a trump card that was specifically used to kill sages. Primordial Yin Yang, you have lived long enough. From today onwards, I will start taking your life. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed coldly as he entered a secondary universe. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.